We are having a discussion of our elementary single plans, and if everyone could stand for the pledge. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. And then I think we have Esperanza here. Yeah.
Esperanza?
Right there.
There's no microphone there.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Esperanza Villegas y esta noche estoy aquí para traducir. Si alguno de ustedes necesita ayuda, me puede encontrar en la parte trasera de esta sala. Muchas gracias.
As indicated on the agenda, we have headsets for the hearing impaired. Public comments. I don't think we have any slips. We don't have anyone other than principals here. So we're on to our agenda, and I will turn it over to Robin Sawaski. Oh, Dr. Sarvis first.
Let me start. I wanted to alert board members to two handouts. One is the school demographic sheet that we handed out at our last meeting, and the other is a full packet of the data sheets for each of the schools. The one departure from the state template on the single plan for school achievement is that under the cover page you have a series of data sheets, and those data sheets tie the school's performance directly to board focus goals. And with that, I will turn the presentations over to Robin Sawaski, who's our Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education.
May I just interrupt for 1 minute? I don't know if I'm not seeing it, but I don't see school names on the individual sheets.
There's the elementary district.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
It's hidden in blue.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to see when you first look at it. Welcome again, and we have our next set of schools. We do have one charter school and one school of choice tonight, along with our traditional schools, the other half of our 13 schools represented. Actually, we only see single plans from 12, though. The Santa Barbara Charter doesn't traditionally take part in this. They could if we wanted them to, but we haven't traditionally. So we have our 12 schools. As I stated last time, this is an opportunity, of course, to dig deep into each one of these schools. You've had the plans to look at, and the single plan for student achievement is directly aligned to our local educational agency plan, better known as the LEAP. And that means that these plans and that plan, the LEAP, are all about categorical funding, as you well know. So it's difficult sometimes for principals to separate out. They've got so much going on, many programs that aren't necessarily tied to categorical programs that enhance the school, really, build up the program. But this presentation is really focused on the categorical funding. So we may have other questions, and we can kind of set them aside for other times, and certainly visiting the schools is a great idea. I know many of you have done that and are getting to see the other programs that aren't necessarily highlighted in the single plan for student achievement. Last time I mentioned, and I'll just, for more for the benefit of the principals, that you know that we're spending our time together very differently this year as principals. And our EPC, Elementary Principals Council, is really a professional learning community in that we talk about each other's work together. We know about each other's schools much more deeply, the data. We're really working together as a team. So we know a lot about each other's schools, and that's been very helpful. And it's growing every day as far as our work. Let's see. The only other thing I want to say is, again, I said this last time, we do share the common challenge of getting our budget information on time. And so you may have questions about budget. Maybe there are things in the plan. I'm not anticipating that there are errors or things, but if you have questions, some of that sometimes goes back to that challenge we had just even in getting these plans put in place to get some of that accurate information on a timely basis. So With that said, we'll start with Brent Milholland, principal at Monroe Elementary.
All right. Good afternoon. I will start off with some brief statistics about Monroe Elementary, and we have 488 students right now. Our English learners are at about 38% at Monroe, and we have 21 classrooms. We just opened up a new kindergarten classroom that is taking students that couldn't be accommodated at some other schools. So we're still in that first stage of getting things going. We have several, I've listed three for myself, three focus areas for Monroe. The first is our English language development, and that is an area that I think is a challenge in a lot of schools. It is a challenge for us. We are using systematic English language development these days, which we started last year, and we're refining this year, the focused approach. And a second focus area for us is a protected writing time, which we're just implementing this year. It's we feel that improving the skill of writing, students will recognize the importance of all the foundational skills and they'll have an opportunity to put those skills into practice. And so for reading and writing and listening and speaking, they all kind of come into play in that writing, and so we're focusing on that this year. And then the last focus area that I'll address is the monitoring of student progress. And of course, we need to we feel we need to refine our practices and our monitoring of the progress of students. So it's one of the key things that we need to have in place so that we can follow kids and keep them moving. Our data, and if you look at the board focus goals, the color sheet, I don't know if you got a color sheet, maybe yours is black and white, yeah. You can see where our challenge is. In the language arts, our Latino population, white population, socioeconomically disadvantaged have all met the mark for AYP, and but our English learners did not, and we had a drop there. If you look down to the math section, we have made the AYP for all of our categories there. So our math is stronger. The percentages by which we are passing up the percent needed is substantial all the way across. So we have some good things going on in math, and we have some stretches for our English learners in the language arts. In the language arts, we lost some ground, as you can see by that 15%, instead of hitting the 24%. As I broke that down and looked at it, I found that by grade level, we could look at that and see that over 3 years, and I look at the trend in this because, you know, year to year there can be fluctuations. So, so on a 3-year scale, our second grades and our 6th grades went up from the 3rd year up to this last year of data. So our 3rd and 4th and 5th grades did not go up. In the year just previous to this one, so if we just go back to 2 years and compare them, our 3rd grade went up and our 6th grade went up. So we've always got this fluctuation, and then I look at those the kids that make up those groups, and you know, I go from one year to the next and I see that a student isn't there, or we have new students in that group, and so there's a fair amount of transiency that goes on in the English learner group. And so it's hard, even looking at cohorts, to see, you know, consistency through the data. So there was a quote I heard recently, and I don't even know who said it, but it was, this isn't rocket science. If it were, we'd be doing much better at it. And it's really, you know, there's so many factors that come into looking at student achievement, and that's why I think looking at the overall trend is really, for the most part, what we need to do. We were able to get our data into an Excel table, and we were able to look at groups of students. And so from the 05-06 data, we could see that in a band, say in the 4th grade, and this is a specific example, in the previous year, we had data that showed that in proficiency, we had 10 kids in 4th grade who had met proficient or above. And then in last year's data, we were able to see that of those 10, 5 of them stayed in proficient, 3 moved ahead to advanced, 1 dropped 1 level, and 1 dropped 3 levels, down to far below basic. And so as we pull the data apart, and of course, that was the most dramatic of all of the data that we have, the most dramatic drop. And so I pulled up that one child, it's a girl in the 4th grade, and I went, I know that girl. I dealt with her all last year. And so the things that I knew about that child told me somewhat about why she had gone from proficient to far below basic. That's a huge drop. And it was social issues. It didn't have a lot to do with academics. 4th grade, she was kind of acting like a 6th grade girl and doing a lot of social things that we know goes on as kids move into, you know, different social stratus. So again, you know, when we look at data and we look at how kids move up and down, there are just so many factors that we have to include. And so it's great when we can get our data and break it out and really be able to see individually what needs to be done. We know where to go with that particular child and the kind of help that she needs to get back on track and move forward. That's a little plug for getting lots of good data. So some of the strengths that we have at Monroe. I'd start off with, we have a really strong seasoned teaching staff. We have lots of experience on staff. It's great to go in and see teachers teaching because there are so many things that are going right in the classroom. They also bring an understanding to the many new focuses that come into education. And so as we move through new initiatives, they have a lot of experience to bring to bear. So we have a real strength in our staff. We also, Monroe has a culture of differentiating instruction through small groups, breaking into smaller fluid grouping. And at the beginning of the year, we take some of the assessments from the previous year in language arts, and we do some assessing right at the beginning of the year also, and we place kids into language arts groups by grade level. This is our PBI, performance-based instruction, which I'm sure you've heard of before. And so we are able to break a particular grade level instead of into 3 classroom groups. We can break them down sometimes as far as 9 different groups so that we have smaller instruction at their performance levels where kids are really working. We're able to do that in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grades every 4 days of the week. So that's language arts. In math, we have our district curriculum, which we use, but then we also closely follow progress of students in our Mastery Math program, which again is, this is a self-paced math program that students work through what we call terminals and are able to move at their own pace. And if they're able to understand concepts quickly, then they test through that terminal and move on to the next. If they need more time, then they have the time to do it there. So a lot of times when students are behind, this is a good place, behind in their grade level math, it's a good place for them to be able to pick up the concepts that maybe they didn't, that weren't solid previously. For students who are moving quickly ahead and ahead of their grade level math, it affords them the opportunity to move ahead. So they do get their grade level curriculum in class, and then they also move through Mastery Math. So on the model of both PBI and Mastery Math, we have started this year. We had a lot of discussion last year in our site council and among staff about starting a protected writing time. And so we now have a 30 to 40 minute time in the morning. It's after Mastery Math. Everybody does we protect that time. We want it to be sacred time so that kids are focusing on writing and practicing the skills that they need at their grade level. I'll get back to that a little bit more. Challenges and barriers at Monroe. We really are working to more finely assess underperforming students and target their low skill areas. And so, the higher you move in the grade levels, the more gaps you potentially have in the learning. It was described recently to me as kids are Swiss cheese, and so they've got these holes in there, and you need to go in and you need to fill those holes in. And so by assessing and doing it as finely as we can, we find where those holes are, and then go about remediating and building interventions to fill those holes. We need to find a way to provide weekly collaboration time for grade level teachers. We do have a monthly collaboration time, and so once a month teachers are able to officially sit down for half a day by grade level and discuss assessments that they've given. They do this at other times, but this is a sanctioned time. So what we'd like to have at Monroe is a weekly time, and I know that some other sites have been able to do that by with various mechanisms, and so I think that we may be able to do something on that, but we need to do some investigation and see if we can build a schedule to maybe have library and computer lab and art at the same time, so that 3 third grade classes can be engaged and teachers can have that time to work together. The more often we can get teachers together for those discussions, the more they're going to be able to move kids forward and collaborate on the fluid groupings and things like that. We also need to continue to refine our monitoring and reporting tools. Last year, through Site Council, we asked the teachers at each grade level to give us information about how students were doing. And the teacher said, okay, how do you want it? And so we said, you be the judge. We want you to communicate to the Site Council, how students are doing at your grade level. And so we got the whole spectrum of just assessment information. So some of it was narrative, some of it was done on computer, a lot of it came in this kind of fashion, which looks very elementary school, but it definitely has a system that gives information about how a class is doing. This is one example. This is a third grade, and I know we're not supposed to bring props, and this is a 6th grade. Sorry, guys. But I wanted you to see what they came up with. This turned out to be the best way to transmit information about how kids are doing. And so the pink are not so good, like red light, and the green are the best, and blue and yellow are in between. And when you look at something like this, you can go, okay, gee, there's a lot of pink in this column, and so, that's an area in listening or writer's concepts, that in this class needs some help. Kids aren't doing as well as they should. And so you can use it like that. When I see this is good for a one shot. And so in our site council, we went, okay, we understand, this one snapshot picture, but then when you line up, if these were the same class on 2 different assessments, because these assessments come up every 4 to 6 weeks, so then you'd put these 2 together, and then you'd want to start comparing, how a student is doing, and you're going across and you're going, okay, Johnny, did this, had these scores, and then went across the next assessment, and then, you want to look at this over time for students and be adjusting and putting them in groups and putting them in interventions that help them out. So this rapidly becomes cumbersome. To me, doing something like this is, I was thinking about this morning, and I was going, it's like Bob Cratchit in A Christmas Carol, and he's sitting there at the desk, and he's got his feather pen, and he's doing the accounting. And if you gave Bob Cratchit a computer, he'd put it in about an hour, and he'd push the button, and it would be done, and he'd be home with Tiny Tim. And so I kind of see this as that, that's where we are with this. And what I really want for Monroe is that we get these ongoing assessments into a computerized form, into an Excel sheet, so that teachers can bring up a student, can compare scores, and really have a base of knowledge about kids and not be struggling with, are they pink this time or green? It really, although this serves a purpose, it's just we should be light years ahead. So I'd really like to see that. And one of the actions that we have is that we bought laptop computers for all of the teachers last year, and we're starting now with staff development on getting everybody up to snuff. And there's this wide range of abilities, computer abilities, on the staff, and so they just got them in their hands last Thursday. So we're off and running on upgrading skills and hopefully moving through email and then word processing and then into Excel, where we can really see our data and where it's taking us with kids. Another one of the actions that we have started to undertake is in that focusing on kids and trying to really find out where those holes are in the cheese. We have taken the California Standards Test information and used that as our first filter. And we've been able to take bands of kids at a particular grade level. And actually, we can just rank them from top to bottom. And we can do this, I hope shortly we'll be able to do this on all of the categories within the CST. So if it's vocabulary, if it's comprehension, if it's word attack, we can rank kids. And then with seeing that, we can use a second filter, which is a reading inventory that I actually got from Harding School recently, and take those kids that we say we want to work with this band of kids, and so let's give them this second filter. And through this reading inventory, we can then start to see where the real holes are. Is it phonemic awareness? Is it's very fine. And so at that point, we can start building groups that may change very rapidly. We might be able to take 3 or 4 kids from a grade level and work with that particular skill and then move them on. Put them back in the group, see how they do, back and forth, take different kids. The teacher can use that information. We have teacher tutors at each grade level. They can use that, instructional assistants. And then one of the other things that we're doing differently this year is we've added a tutoring component to our homework center, which we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays over here at the Los Flores Community Center, or preschool. And so with that, we also want to contact parents and be able to say, what, we'd like, your child to show up for 3 or 4 sessions at, in the evening, and be able to remediate that way also. And then, as I had mentioned, another action is to research a block schedule so that we can free teachers up on a regular basis, a more frequent basis for collaboration. We have our protected writing time, which is another one of our actions. And then I just put it as we are building our computer learning community. And so that is, you know, bringing teachers up to snuff on computer skills and being able to use that as a tool. Our SMART goals, I have 3 of them listed. English language development, we want to see students moving 1 proficiency level in the CELT and the CST, English Language Arts, on an annual basis. We are using systematic English language development. We have 40 to 45 minutes every day for students to be practicing English language development. We're front-loading for reading of stories so that students hear the vocabulary ahead of time, have a little heads up as it comes up in the rest of the classroom. And we have those discussions about student progress every 4 weeks. And so that's our English language development under reading. We are, again, we want to see all of our students moving 1 proficiency level on the California Standards Test every year. That's our goal. We have our protected writing time, which is going to help students focus on a lot of language arts skills. And then we have our PBI, which uses our special ed staff, our teacher tutors, our instructional assistants in breaking down into those groups for reading. For monitoring student progress, we do have the 4-week looking at the assessments, and then we're looking at ways to computerize, you know, our the information that we get on assessments. For professional development this year, we are. I'm very happy. I thank all of you, and I thank Robin for coming up with our Teachers on Special Assignment. That is just a golden opportunity. It's so great to have that support, that backing, and they are very user-friendly. And so they're well received, and they have a lot to offer to our teachers. And so we want to take full advantage of them being available to keep our systematic ELD moving ahead, because that's a big project for us. There's a lot, it's really kind of a framework skeleton, and it needs to be fleshed out, and that's what they're good at helping the teachers with. So we're looking forward to working with them. We're going to have ongoing training for our computers, our laptop computers, which hopefully will give us a lot of real effective information. And then we have teachers who, I'm hoping that some of our teachers are going to be able to start some work. This is about the Coherent Writing Program, which is coming out of Carpinteria, and about half of our teachers have gone through the training. They went through the last 2 summers to have training on that, and more will go next summer. But in between that, I've talked with the superintendent down there, and he has some slots open, and in January we may be able to get some teachers in there, because our writing program right now uses some of the open court writing program, and the teachers that have taken the coherent writing program have been really excited about it, and they're pulling other teachers into it, but there's a lot to it. They really need to go to the whole training. And so, so we will just be moving forward on more training for everybody, because that seems to be a very well-received and effective program. For myself, as a principal, my goal is to get into rooms and watch teachers teach and give them feedback. And I do my darndest. My goal is to get in every 2 weeks, be able to get in every classroom. So every 10 days, I'd like to be in every classroom, circulating through, students seeing the principal seeing the students, and working with teachers. And the other thing is to work with teachers in that collaboration time that they have once a month. And so as they're discussing, I get these copies. They have to do 2 color copies every time they have one of these assessments, because I get a copy. And so I get to look at those ahead of the meeting and then sit down with teachers and talk about what I see in the progress of students. And so that's, I think that's a real valuable time for all of us. When, one of the things that I think we all want to be aware of is, where we go when we have a student who isn't making it, and we've gone through all our filters, and, we still, we look to our teacher tutors for direct interventions, because a lot of times they can provide one-on-one or real small group. And so we use that as one of our interventions. We do regrouping to appropriate levels. We use our student study team. When teachers come to me and go, this kid's just acting out. Can I come to the student study team for that? Absolutely. Any concern you have about a student, bring it to the team, because we have about this many people sitting around, and we invite the parent, and we just pull all the information together. And it's a wonderful process, and I really enjoy being part of that. And then absolutely just bringing, talking to parents and saying, we have concerns, with the progress of your child. Can we talk about it? Is there anything that you see on the outside? And so that parent component is real important. Our site council has recognized the importance of all this small group instruction, and has put about 70% of our budget, maybe even a little more than that, toward teacher tutors, instructional assistants, our homework center. And so we see personnel as being more people working more closely with kids as a real important intervention. And our site council is also very interested in how teachers can use assessment data to improve student achievement for all students. And so they see that a lot of this categorical money comes for our students that are struggling, that are working below their grade level, but they also recognize that we have other students that we want to keep moving ahead. And so that's always in the process also. How is this going to help all of our students? That's kind of the overview, where we're heading this year. And so I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We'll start with Ms. Cordero, but I know that we've allocated a fairly short period of time for each of the presentations. If I could remind my fellow board members to stay focused on questions having to do with categorical spending and student achievement.
That's a point well taken. Thank you. Based on funding, I'll just ask a couple of questions. And one had to do with the after-school additional tutoring that goes on. It looks like you're spending approximately $7,000 total. Is that the total amount that is spent for I'm assuming for teacher stipends?
Yes, yeah, it's teacher and instructional assistants. And so we always, we have a sign-up sheet for our homework center, and we require there always be one teacher, sometimes there are two, and we try to have 3 people there, and so we also have instructional assistants who sign up to work there.
And so that is something that teachers do voluntarily, or?
They do. They're paid, but, but it is
but I
a
mean, but it's-
volunteer position.
And then I noticed that there's also classes that are offered through the PTA. And those look like they may be a little bit more sort of, you know,
They're-
fun, life enrichment kind of
right.
things. And I was
Supplemental.
wondering if those are, does the PTA actually pay the people who teach those classes, or are those done more on a voluntary?
You know, those are, sometimes they're, the classes are instructed by teachers, but more often it's parents and outside people who want to come in and provide art and martial arts, you know, working with clay, some performing arts, things like that. And so sometimes parents pay for those. It depends on, you know, what the class is. There are oftentimes scholarships, and so we're pretty open to most kids that can, you know, that have the time after school to participate.
Great, thank you. And then I have a question that I think I probably would direct towards Robin. And that is, I always like seeing the list of the site council members that we get in the site plans. And I was wondering if we could also include a list of ELAC participants.
Yeah, we certainly could. It's not in the template that's required for the single plan for student achievement, but I don't see any reason. Michael, is there any reason why we wouldn't do that? We all have ELACs. We could include that.
Okay.
So we'll
great.
do that next year.
Thank you.
I'll put that in my notes.
Couple of questions for you.
Sure.
One is, when you talk about a barrier being time and needing time for collaboration with teachers, I thought that Monroe had an early release Friday going on,
We have an early release Wednesday.
an early release Wednesday.
We do. And it's voluntary because the teachers have taught their minutes, you know, through the week. And so although that time is available and it's, teachers often collaborate during that time, it's not other than voluntary.
So do you set up any professional development or have any expectations at all out of it?
I do. But again, it's voluntary, and so I often set up discussion groups, things that we we want to resolve or bring together, like, you know, like our protected writing time. Last year, we met a number of times on Wednesdays to talk about how that would work, you know, how we could implement it. So we do that.
Okay. And another question I had for you was on your goals for the Raising English Learner Achievement section. Obviously, you've got a strike against you. You didn't make AYP this year. And so I was a little surprised that one of your goals was not just to make the 35.2% proficient for next year. Is there any thoughts on the site council about that? Is it more just you don't want to focus on you know, whether or not your program improvement or not?
Well, I think maybe it just kind of goes without saying. You know, we had a lot of discussion about that as we went over the scores at, you know, in August, September. And so we want to see all kids moving ahead. And so if we have kids moving, if we have students moving one proficiency level a year, we will make that. And so I guess it's just another way of saying that without outrightly
Okay.
doing it.
Okay. And I have a question for Robin, and that is gate funding. And I know that the template that we use and for the single plan, it doesn't require anything beyond the, you know, the categoricals that come through the consolidated application.
That's right.
The state really encourages in their material about single plans that it really be a single plan for all student achievement. And as Dr. Hayden has said, of course, the district is always looking for every group to move up, and including high learners staying at the advanced level. There's only one school in this group that even mentions gate money. And there were a couple last time, but they didn't have the funding available yet. What can you tell me?
What happened was the funding was, the applications were not out there. And so we kind of did an email thing through the principals and said, are you including them or are you not? Some schools had already, in the first batch, had already gotten their plans in, and it wasn't included. They hadn't they didn't have time to go through site council to actually make it official. So the decision was to not include it, but obviously some people didn't get that, and it's okay that it's in there, but the plans for the schools will all include GATE, but for this presentation, many of them didn't include it. The majority, I would say, didn't.
Why is it that the GATE funding, or like knowing your GATE funding, because obviously money hasn't arrived for a lot of these categoricals, why is that harder?
That had to do with what I mentioned in the beginning, getting the allocation out. Last year in the spring, $10,000 was cut from our GATE program, and that directly affects what goes to the sites. And so we had to really look at, so how we're going to make this work. We've, since these were developed, we've made the decision to take all the cuts at the district level. So the sites are retaining what they've had. We can't at the district level provide the professional development, and we're going to have to try to find another way to do the GATE certification. We've got teachers halfway through that process now, and I'm going to try to use Title II funding or something to make sure that the teachers get through it. But at the time that this plan was put in place, it was really up in the air. They not only didn't have their amounts, but it was kind of, what are we going to do with it?
And that's, it comes to the site, is it site lottery money? Is that what it's?
No, it's
labeled
GATE
as?
funding.
It's called GATE funding?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's by, there's two different methods of, well, you don't need to know all the allocation. There's two ways you can do it, by GATE, number of CBEDs or number of GATE kids.
And you, I assume, do it? This
We,
district does
whatever
it
the higher
site,
number is, you
whatever
get.
the higher number is. Okay. All right, thanks.
Go ahead, Dr. Noel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Noble. I get, specific question has to do with the ELDs. It's your biggest problem.
Right.
It's your highest priority, and you're not spending any money on it. I don't get it.
You know, it's, I look at that sometimes, and, you know, I think our resources are our people. And because we have the teachers on special assignment, I think that there's a framework there to upgrade the skills of our people, our teachers. And so we have a new program. We have the systematic English language development framework. We have the carousel materials that came last year. And now we have staff development support. And so it is our highest priority, and a lot of the pieces are in place. We just need to get them working. And I think
How do you get the time? I mean, I have images of using this money to pay the teachers to come in on extra time and come up to speed quickly on systematic ELD.
And you know, it could come to that. It could be that in working with our TOSAs, our teachers on special assignment, that we'll do some, you know, Wednesday afternoon types of staff development, in which case we may be paying teachers to do that. So,
But out of what?
actually, it'll be out of Title II. And we have, beyond what you see on in this plan, we have some carryover from last year, which would afford us, you know, we'd be able to do that.
No, it'd be in here.
That was another piece that wasn't put in when we got the funding.
Okay, because it's hard to get the whole picture. And my next comment isn't about you, but it's about this whole process. The categorical funds by law are the supplement. And it just, to me, I'm always missing the thing which they're to supplement. So we sit here and we talk about the supplement, and we don't have a description of the rest of the budget of the plan, you know. And I don't know whether that's an impossibility thing or whether it's just a tradition, but it'd be very, to me, it'd be very, to get a greater coherence about what's going on at a school, kind of see, okay, here's what we do, and you know, here's what our regular budget buys, and here's what the categorical money is going to buy as a supplement to what we do.
I guess my answer to that would be that our core curriculum is the California Content Standards, and we also have our adopted materials. So in English Language Arts, we have our open court reading program. We have our English language development which is supplement, but it's not really, for many of our schools, it's part of the core program at this point, and systematic ELD is considered one of those. They haven't officially adopted English language development programs at the state. They have intervention programs. And then, of course, our math program, the same thing. So that is our core curriculum, the materials that support the content standards, and that's the base that we work from. And then these supplemental pieces, like having, in this case, the Mastery Math Coordinator. That Mastery Math, as Brent described, is extra beyond the Scott Forsman and Harcourt Brace grade level standard work that they do in the classroom. It's there for the enrichment, for the filling in the holes, and the same with the teacher tutors. It's for the intervention where they identify where the students are missing certain grade level standards and skills. That's the supplemental piece.
You're doing just what I was missing.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that goes for
That's
all
exactly
of
what-
everyone.
That's pretty much what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Kind of get the cake and then the icing. You know.
Okay. And our,
I mean, you did say some
yes.
things that went beyond just, okay, well, we just do the standards thing. You talked about some specific expenditures. And there, you know, there's money beyond the payroll. And just getting that whole picture, that's all I find useful. Thank you, Madam President.
I'll ask also about the ELD, that you described it as a skeleton and you're filling in the pieces, and I guess you've been observing, and now you're spending all this time on ELD. Could you just give an example of something new that the teachers are doing in the ELD, in this new time that they have?
They, some of what they do is take their regular curriculum that they would be teaching anyway, and then put it in a format that facilitates an English learner, you know, moving along with this information. And so it can be coming up with rhyming schemes, you know, so that information becomes familiar. It could be in a science, or it can be in a social studies unit, but it's teaching kids patterns in language, new vocabulary, and so things like that. So for the teacher, they go, okay, I want to teach, you know, this concept about language, and I want to do it in science. And so then they have to go to their science lesson for the next week or 2 weeks out and say, now how am I going to put this in? And so that's the challenge. You know, once it's done, then year to year they can do that. But currently they're having to build that type of just schema, you know, to be able to carry those concepts in English language development through other content.
So does the teacher take the kids that are in ELD and somebody else is working with the other children?
I described actually that was something that could happen in the class with everybody, but there is also this set-aside time of 40 to 45 minutes where there can be front-loading of, say, vocabulary for that science lesson. So they may be reviewing, you know, understanding, you know, going over it more slowly and in ways that they can understand it. And then when they're in that science lesson, they go, aha, I know what, you know, that is. So.
Can I ask one more question about
Yeah.
the writing program, coherent writing program?
Yes.
Could you just describe that?
You know, it came, Carpinteria, the superintendent in Carpinteria brought it over from Newhall, where he had been, and they pretty much created this program. And they have broken down the writing genres into grade levels. And so, and they've made it more specific than you generally see the techniques that are needed in each one of those genres. And so, so it's a little more, I think, specific in what it asks at each grade level. It's very articulated. And I think what happens sometimes is that from grade level to grade level, they start to cover the same kinds of material, you know, and so the kids aren't advancing. And this is very well articulated, so.
But it requires everybody be part of it.
Yes. I mean, it's good, you know, as it is now, because it's good information. It's just that it will be better when everybody's on the same page with it.
I need to add, too, that is a district focus starting next year. we have had lots of teachers go through the training, but, you know, we can only focus on certain things. You don't want to focus on too many, so it's been ELD. And writing has just been going on. We all heard about it 3 years ago. Principals got an overview. We said, yes, this is a great program. Curriculum Council said, yes, we need it. Many teachers have been taking it throughout the summer. So starting this next summer, I'll be able to allocate district funds to get other people trained. And that it's a program that just fits right along. It's really teacher professional development, and it's a great program. I haven't heard one teacher that hasn't just raved about it. So you'll hear more about that, but we just didn't want to put it up in front and center because we had too many other things there. And it's the same rubric that Juanita's using at McKinley, so we're all using the same stuff.
Thank you.
I have more of a money question for Ms. Swaski and Dr. Sarvis, and it has to do with, this is the first year we've seen EIA LEP money surpass Title I funding. And we always get, you know, sort of the dartboard for state funding. Is there such a thing so that we can anticipate categorical funding? I mean, I didn't realize the EIA would outstrip Title I until I saw these reports. Right, exactly.
I don't know if Michael, I know what my answer is, but maybe Michael wants to, he's really the expert in that. And you do know that we had a huge allotment last spring that was an additional allotment to last year's amount. So you're seeing more money in here in some cases.
And that is actually the case. The EIA funding actually reflects the funding that was allocated last year. We know that that funding will not continue. As a matter of fact, in today's paper that was released, that the state is currently facing a huge deficit. Second, Title I, those monies are also, we released to the assistant superintendents the Title I allocations that were released by the state on Friday, and those numbers are coming in less, reflecting two things. One, there is a budgetary crisis throughout all the federal and state governments, but two, it also reflects a decrease in our enrollment. So those categorical monies are shrinking at this time.
Then this is a much more global question, and that is, should we not be considering categorical funding when we're talking about our budget in general? Because we're not going to set these children adrift because there's no EIA LEP money or there's no Title I money. And then it has impacts on everything else. So not a question to be answered today, just, yeah, okay. And now we are a mere 17 minutes past the time that we were going to be using for Monroe, but it's always time well spent. So we are on to open alternatives.
Okay, thank you. And we have Gwen
Thank you, Mr.
Phillips.
Milhouse.
Thank you, Brent. Gwen Phillips from Open Alternative.
I see you have, yeah.
As Gwen's making her way up here too, I was dying to jump in when Brent was talking about a system for collecting data and be able to have that at the fingertips of teachers. I've just met with Davis Hayden twice today about our system for that, and we will have something in place actually before the end of this school year, because our report card, of course, our pilot is going on this year, and the field test is next year, where we expect all teachers to be using the report card, and we're pushing for all teachers to use it electronically. We won't force that, but they'll have the opportunity. And so interacting with Aries and a grade book program, we're going to have that available. So that will be happening a lot faster. Okay, Gwen.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello to all of you. It's not afternoon any longer, it's evening. Time goes. Is this on?
Yes.
Is it? I just wanted to put my 2 cents, add them to what Robin said about the Elementary Principals Council, because as you know, I've been around for 100 years, and I have experience through the years, and I just want to tell you that this group of people is the most cohesive, supportive of each other, respectful of each other that I've ever worked with at the administrative level. And so I just want you to know you have a truly great group right now, and we really do have interesting meetings. You have the information, I think, about our school. Well, you know that, well, this year I think we have about 218 students. We're K-8, but, you know, the numbers fluctuate. This year we have a very small number, and we did last year too, of 7th and 8th graders, but it's still a group. It provides a place for students and families who want something a little bit different. We have a small percentage of English learners. However, we try to address their needs and work on extra support. 10 teachers and 1 special ed teacher and classroom, and then numerous aides who work with the individual children who need that extra support. And as you know, I think one of the things coming up is the facilities plan, and we're hoping that that will give us some added space because we're pretty tight. And there are a number of areas that we need to have that we don't. Like often, our ESL teacher is out under a tree on a table doing her work with kids because there's no place for her to work inside. So we really do need extra space, but that's just an aside. In our school, the main things that we're focusing on in our school-wide goals are pretty much the same, 2 of them, that as they have been. But the teachers felt like we are really involved with working on math and teaching our children to think deeply. We work with the Center for Math Inquiry at the university and Bill Jacob. In fact, I was delighted to find, and I ran you off copies if you're interested, but in the latest West Ed, there's a whole article on math learning having to do with children learning by their mistakes and doing some questioning and thinking about whether answers are reasonable or not. And so, and using words that everybody's using throughout. And our teachers are very much committed to this. And often we talk and work together in groups to promote this and be sure that everybody's on the same wavelength with that. So that's one of the things that we're committed to working on. Another is to improve, and this is one of our old stories, our children are very creative writers. In fact, they're doing wonderful things right now with poets in the schools. Just amazing poems are coming out of those children. And we did put some money into working with that group this year. And it's just, everyone is thrilled, and the children most of all. But we know that our children are creative, but they don't always score as high as they should on the conventions of writing, the mechanics, and then sometimes the strategies. And so we're committed, and the teachers are working in groups to improve this. And I'm just going to hit this while I think of it right now. We do have one Friday afternoons as a release day for the children so that the teachers have an hour or an hour and a half that they stay and they work together in groups, and they work in grade level groups, teams. And this year, the teams are committed to inventing some assessments that they will do regularly, and that they will work on the specific things that we know the children need, and then I think be more diligent than we have been in the past with that. And I think, as Brent put it, refine their skills in doing that. So that's something that we're working along with our writing. The other thing that's happened for us this year is it's just all come together. We actually have a new lunch manager, and we have a fabulous organic garden, and some of you who visited school know that. And in fact, I was talking to our new lunch manager the other day, and she was saying, well, you know, just every child that walks out there and pulls a carrot and eats it has learned something. And so we are really into this year combining it all, having the garden education in the classrooms, teaching the nutrition and the connection between garden and the lunch program, and having a healthy lunch program. And we're trying to do more than we've ever done before in that area, and the physical exercise as well, so that we're going to be assessing our kids as to how well they articulate or they show that they are in charge of their bodies and that they are thinking about having a healthy body and it being their own responsibility. So this is our goal. I don't think we're actually putting any categorical money into that. We'd hope that we got one of those PE grants and then they took it away from us on the second round. But we do have a woman who is an ex-PE teacher who volunteers 2 days a week with us and who is, really knows her stuff. And so the children are getting really good physical education. And the teachers are learning from her. So it's kind of staff development as well. As we looked at our data, and I'm sure you saw, we did a big dip in our API score. But, you know, Davis and I did some talking about it, and of course, we did a huge jump last year and the year before. And so we're doing a dance around 800, I guess, up and down. And it's hard to, I mean, the staff looked, we talked a lot about, you know, is there something that we can see here? The problem is, there are only, about 135 to 40 children who take the test. And at some grade levels, there are only, 19, 20 kids. And so you could have 1 or 2 children could make a big difference in that. So we know that that's the case. One thing that my special ed teacher did remind us of was the fact that we have a high number of special ed students with IEPs at our school, high percentage. And all of them last year took the test except for 4 students without accommodations. So that was the most that had taken it. And so we think maybe that had a little bit to do with it too. Those children need extra support. But we were happy that they were, you know, everybody thought they were ready to take the test. That could have affected things. We are not happy with the fact that our Latino children are running in the testing below the Anglo children, and are looking at things that might, in fact, Davis and I had a talk about that, and what, you know, might be contributing to that. And we're looking at it. I have no idea. Well, no, I have some ideas. But the way we've organized things at school, I have a really fine teacher who has been a long time teacher of, in fact, she's trilingual. She worked in Carpinteria for a long time, and then she's been with us for a long time, and she's sort of the teacher in charge of working on the ELD. We have hired, with our categorical monies, I would have wanted her for 5 days a week, but I could only get her for 2.5 because she committed to something else. But so we have one young woman that works 2.5 days a week, has already tested all of those children, the Latino children and the second language children, and so she is presently putting together a program, well, working with them already, but she's done that after she assessed them. And then we've hired someone else to tutor for another, so we've really got a full-time, per 5 days a week, full-time personnel to work with those children that are specially picked out who need that extra support in language, and some of them are just the low-scoring students. In fact, the money that we put into aides out of our categorical monies, those aides are only working with the children who are low-scoring children. And each teacher has figured out which children. I saw one teacher's plan yesterday that was absolutely beautiful. I mean, she's written out the children that this aide is going to work with, and how many minutes, what the goals are, and this is what she's working on as she starts now for the next couple of weeks, and then she will keep revising that. And I was really impressed, and I thought, okay, that's a model. So we really are serious. We've done this before, but I think that we're more committed to looking closely at how we can help these children. As we looked at our data, we did, this is not uncommon, that in schools that focus on open education, as we do, in the young grades, the test scores, they are not high. They're all over the place. And it's because teachers are teaching, integrating everything. They're not stressing, they're not stressing early reading. We don't do that. So we rather look at when a child's ready to, encourage that way, and looking at children individually, so that we're teaching a little bit differently, so the scores don't look great in the primary grades. As the children get older, by the time they get to 6th grade, they're actually, when I added it up, in the English language arts, at the 6th grade, we have 75% above proficient or above. We have 73% proficient and above in 5th grade. In math, the percentages are not quite that high, But that's one of the reasons why math is one of our goals, and we're going to work on boosting that. But by the time the children leave the school, for the most part, they're pretty strong. I also thought that I'd be able to bring you, but I didn't get it done, although I had a grandpa who volunteered just the other day to help me. I was trying to take some years of our students and find out what they're doing right now. And I know the 6th grade, the ones that graduated from high school this year, we just haven't made all the context yet. But all the ones that I've talked to are indeed in college somewhere. And so it's interesting to see. And I was kind of looking at the ones that went all the way through our school too, because that's a little different than kids that come as a 5th grader or 6th, 7th, 8th grader. But I will eventually get something that you can look at, and we'll do more than 1 year. Just takes time. I think I talked about each teacher doing that special design, a special education program for each child. I know another thing that that you're concerned about, and I am too, mainly because I can't figure out quite what to do about it, and that is the attendance issue for us. And I know that that's a stress in the school district. However, if we're looking at it for the children missing out on education, that's not what's happening sometimes when they are gone places or parents are taking them. I had a child, and that's the other thing you and I talked about. We used to be able to do independent study for 2 days or 3 days. Well, now we can't do it except for 5. Now, I had a child who went for 4 days to Montana to a meeting of shaman from all around the world. And it was the most incredible thing. That child was a very important child in the group. And it was an amazing experience for him, the way he talks about it, and his mother's way into this. And so that kind of thing, to me, he's learning so much. And so I hate to discourage things like that. So I think, as we've talked about this before, our parents often take the children on educational experiences that are probably way beyond what we could do in the four walls of the classroom. In fact, I've got another parent who wrote me a note the other day saying she's thinking about taking her children to Ecuador for 2 or 3 months this spring. What did I think about that? I thought, oh my goodness, that would be amazing for those children, and they are of Latino extraction. And so how amazing for them to have that experience. So I haven't talked to her yet about it. But those are the things that happen with us. But let me promise you that I am working on looking every week at the absences and encouraging people if I see some patterns of children not being at school. I think you know pretty much about our school and the things that are important to us. The way the teachers teach, the instruction is very much done hands-on, collaborative, with, I guess, an interest in getting the children to think and question and learn by doing. And that's essential to the way we teach at our school. And one of our strengths, we believe, is the belief that children who are strong learners and lifelong learners are children also who feel good about themselves, who know how to get along with other people, so that social emotional growth is very important to us. And we spend time in the day's work at school teaching the children to problem solve with each other and to have ideas that they learn how to express. And so that is something that's not tested. Although I think I've said this before too, when we started the school, I tried really hard to find a test that I thought would show self-esteem, would test self-esteem and what we could do about it, but I never could find a good one. Maybe who in our district now would know about those kinds of things. And another thing that we teach the children too is to self-evaluate. And when we have a big thing, we spent a staff meeting the other day, and by the way, one of our goals this year also is to half of every staff meeting is devoted to staff development, some aspect of staff development. And the group decides what we're going to focus on for the next time, and the leader is either somebody who's an expert within the group, or we just all share our ideas. We had a really good sharing the other day, and committing to what we're doing to really teach our children to be responsible for their learning and to want to do their best And that's a concern. And we feel like we have to, in fact, we also are going to get the parents together to work with us on that whole deal about, not allowing the children to accept least from themselves, but to do their best. So we have some ways we're working on that. And our children learn to self-evaluate, and then they are part of our conferences. And I don't know if you know that, but our conferences are three-way conferences, and I don't know what the rest of the district is doing these days, but the children are always in on the conference, and they talk about their work, and they show their work, and they set goals. And then the adults just talk about how they can support them in it. And as I've always told the teachers, just wait long enough and ask the right questions, and the kids will own up to all the things that you would have brought up in the conference that they need to work on. So children can really learn to do that. I feel like I've covered the SMART goals. That will bring our school-wide score back up into the 50% proficient or higher in mathematics, and that we will show gains for the Latino students. And the teachers are working on assessments and working together. And then I am also overseeing that, probably more than I have. It's a little hard with half-time to, make sure that you get in there and do that, but I'm going to work on that. And the teachers, as the groups, the teams of teachers are working together, they will then decide how they're going to report back to the rest of the staff, so that the whole staff is working together, and what each team finds out will benefit others in their work with their students. Professional development quickly is working with the Center for Mathematical Inquiry at UCSB. I told you, working with poets in the schools. We generally work with script for our writing. However, I think that I'm going to encourage that some people get involved in what Brent was talking about, so that we can pick the good pieces out of that as well. We have a number of teachers on staff who are experts in certain areas, and one of the great areas that we did this summer in staff development was garden education. And we have a teacher who was a garden educator before she got her credential and became an elementary teacher. And she has shared terrific things with the staff. So amongst our staff, we do staff development. Our teachers are involved in AVID. One of our teachers is doing Science Matters, which she comes back with great things about, and she's shared materials and ideas with the rest of the staff. And we always encourage, although I don't know how we're going to do it this year if we can't go during school time, it just occurred to me, but I always encourage them to visit other progressive schools, because there are other schools that are doing great things that our group could benefit, I think, by seeing what they're doing. And so, as always, I'm a teacher leader, and I encourage and support students and teachers, and try to be on top of what we need to be doing and bugging a little bit, but always trying to pull it together and make sure that we are following through on the things we said we would do, because the group decides what our goals are.
Thanks, Gwen.
If there are questions.
Ms. Parker?
I'm glad you brought up Science Matters right just at the end, because I've been meaning to say that I think it would be really useful to have the science scores on here as opposed to just the English and math. You just go to an 11 by 14 format. No problem at all. I'm so pleased that your staff is participating in all these things that are going on in the district. I'm really very happy to hear about the math professional development that you are doing as well, and I would love to see the article that you're talking about.
Oh, okay, got a copy for you.
I think all of our schools, the students participate in the it's a parent-teacher-student conference, but it sounds like it's really student-directed at OAS, so that's very interesting to hear. I didn't think it was possible to do independent study at all anymore, where you can get ADA credit for it. You still can, but it has to
But
be.
it's 5 days.
It's 5 days. And it's like a 5 days maximum and minimum type thing, or?
It has to be a minimum of 5 days, so that you can go more than that.
Okay.
But
didn't you
we're
say
not
you
doing.
Just be absent a few more.
Yeah. Just stay away longer.
Didn't you say
Okay.
statewide, though, it was less? Well, anyway, we talked about investigating that.
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to look into it, see if we still have to abide by that exact.
Okay. Yeah. And obviously, did you get the school garden grant?
Yes, yes, 2,500. And then, yeah, and then last year, we had a Title V small amount of money, $500 or something that we used. So together, yes, what we're doing is making a classroom out in the garden. And so we have materials to work with and tables to work on and a cover. So that's in the process of being designed.
Okay. Well, obviously, the big issue to look at for you seems to be facilities, but that's a whole different topic. So
right.
we'll-
Different meeting.
Different meeting.
Right.
Stay tuned. Dr. Noel?
I quit.
Come on, Bob.
Just rerun my tape from last year.
I know.
Go ahead, Ms. Malikoff.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, really. It sounds like a lot going on. I did want to say that we should encourage parents to have experiences with their children. It would be nice if they did it over the breaks and so.
I know, I know that's true. And I do say that occasionally to them, yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. Cordero.
I don't really have questions either, because I think you touched on a lot of things I was interested in. But I always just want to say that whenever I hear you talk about this school, I always wish that I had gone, well, I loved Franklin School, which was my alma mater. But the school always just sounds so wonderful, the philosophy behind it. And I understand your concerns about the teachers not being able to take time during class, when you stated at the end, during the day in order to go visit other schools. And I think that's something that I've spoken with Dr. Sarvis about, that there are times when I think that maybe it would be appropriate for teachers to be able to have some time during the regular school day when there's no other way that that
Yeah,
same
we could do it.
experience could be accomplished. So, at any rate, I kind of empathize with that concern.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gwen. And I'll say Gwen, because the first time I was at OAS and asked for Ms. Phillips, everybody looked at me
said,
like, who's
"Who's
she
she?"
talking about? It's having nothing to do with the single plan, but I've seen student-led conferences work very, very successfully with my own children, beginning as early as second grade.
Oh, yes.
So I think it's
Yes.
a really
Oh, it
worthwhile
is.
endeavor.
It's just very carefully manipulated little thing, but it works.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Very careful planning,
Thank all
yeah.
of you.
Okay, so now we are ready for Peabody Charter School.
Okay, we're about 15 minutes behind schedule. I will pass those out. Thank you. And we have Kate Ford, principal of Peabody Charter School. Maybe Kate will try to get us back on track. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you.
Well, good evening. In pondering my thoughts for you tonight, I must say that I have created some comments for you that I think are more along the lines of what Dr. Noel said, because I know how interested you are in Peabody. So really what you'll be hearing tonight is a kind of a state of the state address, a state of the school, if you will. And when I was thinking about what I would say to you, my first reflection was what a difference a year makes. Because when I first created this, the SPSA last year, and I had great assistance from Pat Morales on the data analysis, I had been the principal at Peabody Charter for just about 3 months, and I was just beginning to learn the mission and vision of the school, just beginning to understand the intricacies of the charter, just beginning to understand how they had crafted this very nice instructional program that did allow for teacher planning and collaboration, just learning about the community of, you know, at least 740 students and now upwards of 100 staff members and, of course, many, many parents, and also becoming completely reacquainted with the expectations of the state, the feds, the district with regard to assessment and with regard to the standards since I'd been gone from California for 7 years. And then I was also, of course, learning about the ever-changing and essential relationship with Santa Barbara School District. So now, after a year of very interesting and very challenging transition, especially with the renewal of our charter and the new status of independence, I have reviewed the data and reflected on it very intensely with the Peabody Board of Directors, excuse me, and submitted this plan and the executive summary to you. So I'd like to cut to the chase with some of our reflections and my conclusions. As you know from reflecting yourselves on our plan, we did not achieve the targets from last year's plan, but we certainly learned a lot in the process. For example, we did not meet the school-wide target for 65% proficient and advanced for ELA, but we did improve 2 points school-wide, and the EL population improved 4 points in 2007 to a total of 30.7 proficient and advanced in a year when the state target was 24.4. In math, our school-wide target that I set last year for grades 3 through 6 of 90% to try to match the good numbers that we had in grade 2, that was not met. In fact, the scores decreased slightly, and even though our percentage of white students who scored proficient and advanced was 79%, the EL proficient and advanced percentage dropped school-wide from 38.1 to 35.2. And then regarding our third goal in science of a total of 60% fifth graders scoring at proficient and advanced, our 2007 scores improved only slightly from 46% to 47%, with significant achievement only on the scores of white students, which impressively went from 64% proficient and advanced to 73%. So as you know, the Peabody story is an interesting and complicated one because there also was notable improvement. In ELA, the scores have improved every year for Latino, EL, and disadvantaged students, and in math, the scores have improved every year in the disadvantaged population. And in ELA, most subgroups, except the disadvantaged students and EL, have already met the 2007-2008 state target of at least 35.2, and in math, all groups except EL have already met the 2007-2008 state target of 37%. So these comparisons have led to the conclusion reached in the single plan in front of you, and we are determined to go for our goals again, perhaps more modestly, but in the same areas. Because the delta between the school-wide goals and the white student, scores and white student scores and the performance of our Hispanic students and English language learners is significant, both academic goals also address those low performers. So you see that we have an ELA goal and a math goal that actually have 2 goals embedded within. There is also a strong expectation that Peabody will be a model of achievement in science, especially because of the beautiful state-of-the-art facility, science lab on campus, and the focus on science instruction, the partnering with the Museum of Natural History, and the focus on professional development in science at all grade levels. So as you can see, the third goal, again, is in the area of science. In particular, science achievement for the EL students. Across all grade levels, not just 5th grade, the science program now, this year, incorporates ELD with the science standards, and that includes the academic vocabulary of science, which we believe is so important, and this should make a significant difference. I know you're very cognizant of the achievements of Peabody, but I want to tell you a little about them as you reflect on the very real issues and challenges we also face as a result of looking closely at the scores and creating goals. We're recognized as a Title I achievement school, and only 4 schools in the county were given this award. We have the highest attendance percentage in the district, and we are a fully enrolled school of 740 with a waiting list, plus 100% of the staff chose to go with the school support independence, and stay at Peabody Charter. And we think these are all elements that also contribute to the success of the school and are summarized in our plan. But I want you to know that even as you look at the plan, perhaps you would think that there maybe is just lip service to what we're committed to and what we know has worked in the past. But the stakes are high at a charter school. And when we say that our curriculum and instruction is aligned to standards and designed to meet the needs of our student groups, I want you to know that this year each grade level is reviewing new curricular resources in ELD, and that we are strongly enforcing a minimum of 30 extra minutes per day in ELD, in addition to materials and lessons that provide survival English skills and basic language. There is a focus on academic vocabulary, and we have new materials for that in science that are also being implemented. When I say that there is regular teacher review and analysis of state and local assessments and instructional strategies, this year it means that the teachers are intimately involved in what I just described, and that our new assistant principal, Casey Kilgore, and our curriculum coordinator, Rich Dixon, and I are monitoring the process and the progress closely. When I say that we have highly qualified and dedicated teaching staff, this year we have planned every staff meeting to address these goals and these issues so that the professional development and the time is meaningful. And as you know, teachers at Peabody are provided with an average of about 220 minutes per week for preparation, planning, and collaboration. This includes, in this average, we are including the late start Fridays, along with at least 7 times during the year when teachers as a team have a 3-hour block for planning and collaboration to enhance all that we try to do. There also is the Peabody Summer Institute, which we hope to increase back to 5 days. This past summer it was 3 days. Immediately after school is out in June. The power of creating a roadmap for the coming year cannot be overstated. And also, I want to remind you that Peabody uses the specialist model when it comes to technology, literacy, and science. And all the science specialists are working very closely this year with Rich Dixon. When we say there's continuous monitoring of student data, such as their achievement, attendance, and behavior, this year the teachers are working closely also to track individual student performance, because as we began to look at it, we began to think about the power of just thinking child by child. A little bit like what Gwen said, but every child's test score makes a big difference, and of course, the success of every child does too. Rich, as the curriculum coordinator, has created an outstanding training video just this week, and it's on our website. I invite you to go see it. That's entitled Accessing Student Data. And this particular video is in addition to others that our staff can access at any time, actually anyone can, to help improve their knowledge and expertise in different academic areas. This year, weekly team meetings address EL learners and science every time. And when we say that the school organization encourages reflection and improvement through the use of peer collaboration and mentoring, we mean it. We're truly strengthening the role of the leadership team, which includes one teacher from each grade level who acts as a liaison for decision-making and planning, which is so crucial at a charter school. This group is highly experienced with varied expertise, and truthfully, we cannot achieve our goals without these teacher leaders who, frankly, were underutilized last year. And when we say that we have safety net services for those students who are underperforming, it means that we have additional tutoring, instructional assistants, and after-school homework assistants. It means that success breeds success, and we place a high priority on our enrichment program and the focus on art, drama, and music as other fantastic ways to teach ELD skills. And you can even, in those classes, teach math, reading, and writing, of course. And also when we say that we're providing additional resources to support our underachieving students, this specifically involves helping our parents become more involved to a greater extent. I was absolutely delighted last week when our ELAC meeting brought 40 parents to the school with a goal of 100 for December. And these are all ways to focus on enhancing what's happening at home and augmenting and adding to greater student success. So none of these goals, of course, can be accomplished without empowerment and the involvement of the entire adult community at Peabody, and we are a team. Just to review for you, our new curriculum coordinator, Rich Dixon, this is an expanded and new role, always provides hands-on mentoring in science to the teacher. He is a science mentor and regularly creates training for the teachers on our website. The assistant principal, Casey Kilgore, came to us from Cleveland. Her many successes as a teacher there, especially with EL students, are a tremendous boon to our school. And she also is responsible for the recent garnering of a $5,000 grant to start a mariachi band at Peabody. The leadership team, as I told you, acts as the liaison and role models and communicators for the entire staff. And as many of you already know, the visits to our classroom will reveal to you the energy and dedication that makes the school great. And also, it's important to note that our board of directors now takes a very active role, not only in governing and not only in supervising me, but for setting a standard for student achievement and teaching excellence and ensuring the fiscal, the academic, and the legal health of the school. Each board meeting starting this month has an academic focus and a report from teachers, and the members have taken a really keen interest in the assessment data and this plan. And to remind you, on our board, we have 3 very dedicated parents and 4 terrific staff members in addition, plus myself, and 3 community members. And I'm just delighted. We're very lucky that we have Elaine Gibson on our board, who's from the Museum of Natural History, Karen Feeney, who's an expert in environmental issues, and Dr. Jules Zimmer, who's a retired professor from UCSB. So finally, I, as the school leader, as another part of this puzzle, must ensure that all of the aforementioned plans and activities are in place and are significant. In addition to the goals I shared with you for student achievement and for professional development and excellence and reflection, it's also really important that I expect and reinforce parental involvement in every aspect of the school and create a learning environment that is safe and happy and engaging and fun, that I communicate effectively and I celebrate often. So, in summary, this past year has made all the difference, and we intend to prove to you and to ourselves that these goals are reasonable, achievable, and significant, and we will increase the success rate of our underachieving students, especially our EL population. Our school charter demands that we lead the way in this city, and the 100 employees, 11 board members, and hundreds of parents who volunteer at our school are committed to make this happen. One of my favorite quotes is from Frank Lloyd Wright, and he says, "I know the price of success, dedication, hard work, and an unremitting devotion to the things you want to see happen." And I assure you, my team at Peabody is willing to pay the definition of the price of success. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Ford. Dr. Noel?
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I simply, I'm having a little trouble seeing I'd like to learn more about your English learner program, number one, and then just help me connect it to the budget.
Well, again, as Robin was saying, the actual ELD program itself is embedded within the school day, actually. And the teachers, there are 3 or 4 models that the different grade levels are using to make this happen. But basically, the students during that time are grouped according to their language ability. And so there are, depending on the grade level, depending on the numbers, there are probably in each grade level 2 or 3 classes during that special time that are ELD, and then there are other classes which are either advanced writing or in a couple of grade levels actually SLD for Spanish language development. The categorical funds are actually used to provide the after-school tutoring. We have kind of a conventional ESL after-school tutoring program, and we also are looking at and actually going to have our own little materials display. We've asked a few different publishers to come in, so we're looking at new materials and resources. And also finding ways to provide extra professional development for the teachers. Those are all provided for in some measure by the categorical funds.
You do the systematic ELD program, are you part of that?
Well, we're not actually technically or formally part of it, but we're not exactly sure where we're going with ELD, I must admit to you, but that is why it's become a complete focus for the leadership team and for the assistant principal. Just because there are lots of different materials floating around the school, and especially because as we look at the assessment, we're just not pleased with what we've done. We're proud, but we can't, you look at the test scores and you know you have to do more. I would be happy to let you know just as soon as we are more convinced that we're completely on the right track with ELD.
Thank you very much.
I was trying to listen, really carefully. You said you have classes in ELD? Is that what you just said? And so they come out?
Well, yes, if you, remember, because we're such a large school, perhaps, let's say third grade, we have 5 classes, third grade classes. So during the ELD time, the students are grouped and according to their language ability. And so it's just homogeneous grouping at that time. Does that clarify?
Yeah, so each teacher is.
non-ELD
So
are
each
doing something
teacher's,
else.
yes, that's right.
So you may have a teacher that focuses on that.
Yes, so we'll have a group usually at every grade level that's very low, either in reading and writing skills, speaking and listening also, and then maybe one that is somewhat in an intermediate phase. And then we have our English-only groups. It really varies by grade level, though, how it
How
pans
many?
out.
And that's for English, not, I mean, do you do that as well? Not so much for ELD, but for math?
For
and-
English language, we do not, we have heterogeneous grouping through third grade, and then we do homogeneous ability grouping, 4th, 5th, and 6th.
You know, let me back.
Go ahead,
back
go ahead.
into it. That's consistent, the way you're handling it, like in a pull-out fashion, is consistent with one of the few clear findings in the Okuda study that's reported on EdSource. They say it's more effective to do it that way than to have ELD done by the regular teacher in the regular classroom.
Which we certainly have tried in the past, and I think that was one of the strong reflections that we had in the last few weeks in looking very closely at the data was, we've been doing that, and perhaps it's not working.
Yeah. That study didn't find many things at that level of particularity that you could say are effective.
Right.
But that was one.
That's all my questions.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Cordero.
Well, you touched a little bit on, I was going to ask you a little bit more about your ELD program as well, but I think you've touched on that a little bit more. So I'll move on. I was wondering, because your data indicate that I think 35% of your students are English language learners?
That's
Is that
right.
Correct? Or I'm sorry, primary English or Spanish language speakers. Spanish was their first language.
Well, you could be right. I don't know exactly, but 35 is our English language learner percent.
Okay, so I'm assuming that also means that probably roughly 35% of the parents are
Probably.
Spanish speaking
Yes.
parents.
That's why our ELAC committee is so
Yeah, and I
essential.
was happy to hear you say that they are shooting for a target of 100 participants by December,
Yes.
and they already reached 40, so that's...
Last week, yes.
I'm very happy to hear that. I was wondering, are there other things that you are doing specifically to work with the Spanish-speaking parents?
Well, I would say not, well, offhand, not specifically. However, working with parents is such an essential part of Peabody that it's kind of one and the same. So informally, I think, I wouldn't say it's exactly a formal program, but we really try to get our Hispanic parents into the classroom. And we really try to find the ways that they can be more involved, even if they don't feel like they can help with, say, for example, a reading group or a math group, but they can come in and they can be of some assistance to the teachers. We really feel, and I'm sure every principal does, that the more we get those particular parents just on campus, the more powerful it will be. And that is easier done at Peabody just because we have a great lunch program. We have the Late Start Fridays where we encourage parents to come and play with their children. We try to schedule conferences and meetings at times when parents can come. And specifically, our PTSO actually has a goal this year of reaching out to the Spanish-speaking parents. And rather than asking them to come to the PTSO are going to the ELAC meeting in December.
Oh, that's great. I'm happy to hear that. Because it seemed as if you didn't have, and I might have overlooked something, but it seemed as if I didn't see much in terms of spending focused on parent participation. Which
Well, we have set aside and we're ready to spend some of our categorical funding on resources for parents. But, so much of what you can do for parents doesn't really cost much at all.
Right.
And what we find in our Hispanic population is, even if you were to say, we'll provide a dinner, they actually love to bring the dinner. So I don't think it's that much of a big dollar item. Certainly it's time, it's effort, it's being creative in terms of your new activities. But we have money set aside for it, believe me.
you. And this question is not directed at you. It's directed at actually just a general observation that I've made in all of the single site plans. And that is that in your case, it's the board of directors. In many other cases, it's more the site council. That I see very few parents identified with Spanish surnames, which there could be other Latino parents that don't have Spanish surnames. But given that those committees are often the ones that are largely responsible for allocating, or at least making the recommendations for the allocations of these funds, and they often represent a very sizable percentage of the school population of parents, I would really like to see a very targeted attempt to get more, not just Latino or Hispanic parents, but Spanish-speaking parents on these groups, because I think that might influence the kinds of proposals that would come forward or that would be recommended for doing outreach and for increasing the achievement of the Spanish-speaking students. So, and that's certainly not directed just at you. It was a broad observation. So,
but it's even more valid at a school like Peabody, and I completely agree with you, because the board of directors is in charge of governing this school and the complete direction of it, and the board is well aware of its need to increase the Hispanic population on the board.
Just a couple of things from me. One is, you were talking, in the plan, it talks about how the classes are heterogeneously grouped.
Yes.
And obviously, things are happening during the day when kids are ability grouped.
Yes.
Can you sort of describe what's going on in your 4th through 6th grade level? They're doing ELD, and that's English,
language
that's
ability
language.
group.
And that's separate from their English language arts time?
It is, which is based on reading and writing.
So that is also
skills.
ability grouped?
It is, and also math.
And then math?
Yes.
So
everything else is heterogeneous.
So how do you structure the day? They start off with their language arts teacher, or?
Well, most do, but because we have regular art, music, PE, and drama, it's a little bit more like what you might see even in a junior high. There are times when people are having reading and writing in the afternoon, or math later in the morning.
I guess what I'm wondering is, who do you consider your teacher if you're a fourth grader, for example? If you go to one teacher for English, one teacher for ELD, one teacher for math, and they may all be different teachers, is it the enrichment teacher, the social studies, art, is that their regular classroom teacher, or who?
The regular classroom teacher is the person they start the day with, and that usually goes between 25 or 30 minutes. So say 8 to 8:30, they're with a regular teacher. And that teacher does all kinds of things, including social studies, character development, and just those things that maybe are more grade level specific or project oriented. And that is your teacher. Now, of course, then that's why team planning and team collaboration is so essential, because then that is the teacher that actually conducts the parent conference.
Gotcha.
So they have to have been in very
Yes, I could
constant
imagine.
communication with the other teachers, if in fact they don't see that child throughout the
other-
academic portion of the day.
Okay, all right. And just real quickly, I was glad to see you focusing again on the science instruction. It's always been really interesting to see Peabody. It has the nicest science lab in the
It does.
district. And it's been so surprising in some ways to see that the science scores, there are so many other schools that are doing better with much worse facilities, which of course speaks to how much more important instruction is
I agree.
than the facilities. So I'm glad to see that that's again a focus.
I'd like to make a footnote remark.
Sure.
Thank you for coming. You don't have to.
Thank you. Thanks for acknowledging that.
And actually, I think
And
that's.
thank your board of directors for that.
But I must tell you, it was part of the MOU and the promise to Dr. Sarvis. He asked me to be a
Well,
part
then
of
you do
this.
have to.
Well, I'm not exactly sure how it's written, but we have an agreement that this is one way that I'll stay in touch with all of you.
I personally appreciate it a lot. So.
Thank you.
It's actually a good segue to my question, which is, you get Title I funding, which is federal funds, but obviously from the state, you don't get EIA
No.
LEP funding because you are
It's
a
all the
charter
block
school.
grant.
Right, it's part of the block grant. How do you identify then funds to augment your ELD program? It's just funding from your charter block grant?
It's funding from the charter block grant. We also, have a pretty successful fundraising program at the
No,
school.
and I think that that's important to
adds
point
the bottom
out.
line.
Okay, yeah.
And also then our Title I
Right,
and other Title II and III.
right, which are also federal.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't really have any other questions.
Thank
See,
you.
that seemed too easy, right? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
And I think having covered 3 schools, we are at our break time.
It was warm when we started.
I know, yeah.
It's getting cool.
We can kind of gonna be warm now. Thank goodness. We are starting with
Are you
our
getting chilly?
final 3 schools of the day, starting with Roosevelt Elementary School.
Okay, is that my cue?
That's your cue.
Okay.
Hey, Dr. Donna Ronzoni.
I have been given a number of mandates from my colleagues, so I'm going to try and clear this up as quickly as I can. Although when I was working again at it last night, I could hear my husband down the hall going, "I get treated to an hour of analysis of Roosevelt every day. You'll have no trouble." I asked him to come for me, but he said no. Anyway, just the state of the school is that we are at 548 students, the largest we've been since I have been at Roosevelt, and in recent memory for our office staff. We were added 1 additional teacher in the upper grades this year. The percentage of English language learners at Roosevelt is about 14%. Which causes us some other challenges on how to handle that particular group of students. We have 28 teachers on staff. Our API, we met all of our AYP goals, which we were very happy about. API, we were happy to see a small but an increase, although 2 of our subgroups, our Latino students and our low socioeconomic students were in the negative. They fell about 22 points and something else, 22 and I think about 17 respectively. However, as Brent pointed out, if we look at that overall for about 4 or 5 years, we are continuing to go either up or a little bit down. So we're within parameters. We're not overly concerned, but we're aware. Our goals for improving student achievement, of course, are hopefully that all of our students continue to grow, at least by 10% in the CSTs, and we always meet our AYP. For English learners, one of the things that, we've always done the one level CELT increase, but one of the groups that we are looking at even more carefully this year is those students who have been reclassified, fluent English proficient, because we are supposed to be tracking them for 3 years. And so what we want to do is, this year, is we want to look at them 1 year after they've been reclassified, and our goal is to have them performing at the basic level in the ELA portion of the CSTs, and at the proficiency level within 2 years, and then match interventions and support programs so that we can do that, because one of the things we found is that once we were reclassifying them, other than reading intervention or student study team, we didn't have another analysis to go with tracking them, so we're doing that. And then yet another comment came up from the staff the other day at a staff meeting, was that even students who are initially classified as English, but may be living in bilingual households with parents who are not fluent English proficient or working in 2 languages, and as the content gets more complex, particularly for the older children in the family, they might not have the kind of support that they need, particularly if they're students who struggle a bit. So we're going to take a look at that group as well. I'm going to try and just highlight those things that we use our categorical funding for, and then I'll leave it open for questions. One of our strengths, we believe at Roosevelt, is the fact that we do flexible instructional grouping, particularly in grades 3 through 6 for language arts and mathematics. And for our English language development program, I personally believe, and the staff was working right with me on this, that you don't develop a model and then squeeze the kids into it. What we're doing, particularly because of the size population that we have of English language learners, is actually looking at the students each year and developing some kind of a flexible grouping model that matches the needs of the kids. And I'll give you 3 examples. One, our kindergarten class is 22 English language learners. So when we looked at the incoming group, we decided that the best way to handle that would be to hire a teacher tutor. And what we do, we do use categoricals to continue funding kindergarten aides, and part-time, so we have 2 of them, 3 hours every morning. And then 3 days a week, we have a fully credentialed teacher all day. She has, she did ELD instruction in Utah, so she had experience. And the teachers have spend a dedicated 40 minutes a day. They've leveled the ELD students in their CELT levels. And then while they're working and doing the direct instruction for ELD for those kindergartners, the teacher tutor is working on enrichment in language arts and social studies, but they try to coordinate it so whatever the students are doing in the ELD development classes, they're getting the same language basic vocabulary that the kindergartners or EO are doing. In the 1st and 2nd grade, we didn't have as many ELs, so right now what they're doing is handling it during workshop time with the reading intervention aides and the newcomer aide, which we have as well for our students who are here less than 12 months. In our 4th grade, which is a grade level that has not only a number of English language learners that we can't seem to move along in the CELP, but there's also the highest number of special needs students and a wide range. It's just an interesting group of kids, and includes a number of highly gifted students as well. So what those 3 teachers did, they all have experience in ELD instruction. One teacher was a bilingual teacher in years past. They took the English language learners and those students who have been reclassified and are still in the 2 to 3, maybe 4-year post being reclassified, and they've leveled them for parts of language arts. And they do their direct ELD instruction then, and then the kids who are EO and don't need any language instruction, they're doing a writing program. So there are a couple of examples of how we've developed how to handle our ELD instruction based on the needs of the kids, because we don't have huge groups of kids. And so we had to make some adaptations there. A large part of our categorical funds, most of it, as you read through it, go for staffing. And one of our large outlays is for a computer and information science teacher. And we group that person with the thankfully funded PE teacher, because we didn't get the grant either, and the art teacher, who are funded by our parent organization. so that our students at each grade level, they go to those classes together at the same time, 3 days a week, and our teachers are able to meet as grade level teams for 40 to 45 minutes, either with me or themselves, or the TOSAs, the teachers on special assignments, which we too are very glad to have because we have some particular challenges. So that's a good outlay of funding for us there. Our after-school tutorial and homework club, and this year what we did was we not only have the homework club for the at-risk kids, but we've also made some groupings of students who are English language learners and need even more direct instruction in English language development. So we've got 2 groups going on there. We fund a newcomer aide. We do have one Title I aide that we fund who's full-time, and she's bilingual, and we use her wherever we need her. So we base it on where the need is, and that's where we put her. And the 2 kindergarten aides. We're also looking at hiring yet another teacher tutor in the upper grades. We just haven't been able to find just the right person yet. I'll skip the challenges for a minute. One of the things that we did with our data analysis, I'm kind of going a little bit out of order here to save us time, is we wanted to see what it was about some of our students that they didn't see in those groups. What is it? Who were they? And were our interventions matched to their needs? And one of the things that we were finding out is that the kids in those groups tended to be more mobile. They attended 2 or more schools. They tended to enter our school system or Roosevelt either late in the year, so they didn't always come in the fall. They'd end up coming in December or January, either from another part of California or from out of state, and yet they were still in the testing pool. And we also found, interestingly enough, that a good number of those students were students who were having some family issues, custody issues, divorces, which was probably facilitating the mobility. They tended to be the students with the high absence rates or tardy rates and the chronic Monday morning illness. You know, that chronic illness you get every Monday. And we also have a big influx, and it happened to us again this year. It's happened to me every year at Roosevelt, where we get a big influx of kids at 4th grade and a little bit less at 5th grade. And they tend to come to us from the private schools or the alternative schools. Since we're on TV, I don't want to mention them. But, and so sometimes what we see is a curriculum mismatch, or students who may have been at risk but didn't necessarily have access to intervention programs in their younger years. So by doing that, by analyzing it even that far down to per kid, we've been able to see, okay, what kind of interventions do we need? And so it just, it supported our belief that our expenditure in the Family Services Council, which is another big expenditure for us, is really important for us to do. And one of the things that we've extended with the Family Services Counselor, with myself and with the health assistant, is more interagency cooperation and communication with places like CALM and Child Protective Services, because these tend to be the kids who are in our far below basic and below basic categories that we just can't seem to push up. So we think a whole child approach and a whole interagency approach would be helpful for that. As far as staff development, which is another area for funding, Roosevelt this year has 5 teachers new to the staff, 4 of them who are in the first couple of years of their teaching. 2 are actually in their first year of teaching. And so we have 8 people involved in BITSA, the 5 new teachers, first year, second year teachers, and then 3 are doing the mentoring. And then I have teachers who are, looking at the last years of their career, and teachers in the middle. So trying to find a one-size-fits-all staff development is a little hard. We're all on the same page with the ELD. We all need that. And we're all on the same page, we think, about technology, so we're working together as a group there. But what I've done is encourage them to look for and come up with a plan for themselves or as a grade level of what they think their kids need at that particular grade level or what they feel individually. So there are some individual things that they're doing as well as some whole group things. But we are focusing on technology as a group and the English language development. Another big outlay for us in our categoricals is upgrading our technology. Our site block grant will be going to upgrade the computer lab, and you'll see that there's bits and pieces of money in there for computer-assisted instruction. It's come up every year that we want some intervention in math. We tend to do better in our scores in mathematics, but we see the AYP going target moving. So, and because our kids can really be successful there, we want to keep that moving. So as soon as we get the new computers in the lab up, and our teachers want to extend that to even more technology in the room, like the LCD projectors, the document projectors. One of the other things that, because so much of our money, our categoricals go to staffing, anticipating what those personnel needs are going to be in the summer and the early fall is a really big part of our job, because we don't always know who the students are going to come in who are at risk. So we have an assessment, pre-assessment, informal assessment that we do with our incoming kinders, and we're thinking of extending that to some of our kids in the primary grades, and particularly in that 4th and 5th grade bubble that come in. So, and that means paying the teachers to come in the summer to do some of that assessment work for us. Some of the things that are listed under actions don't actually relate to categorical spending, so I'll skip them. Another big outlay for Roosevelt has been, and that's prior to my coming there, and so I can't take any credit for it except to keep it running strong, is our reading intervention program, which begins in 1st grade. We know at the end of kindergarten who we're going to need to pick up in 1st grade, so we get them before they fail. It has kept our special education numbers down, and of course we were a little ahead of the curve there with the response to intervention model, because the school had used the Elk Grove model, and it's working well. But that's a huge outlay of money, because we don't get that much as Roosevelt. We're the poor little rich school. The other new thing that I did this year, and I did it in cooperation with Amy Alzina and Mike Vale. One of my concerns when I came to Roosevelt and Santa Barbara was that we didn't have a basic infrastructure to track our English language learners. So my first year there, it descends upon the school, a couple of different people who were going to test the children, and I didn't know who they were. The teachers knew some of them from the years. The kids don't know who they were. We had one very effective reading intervention teacher, and she had started to help me coordinate the children who were English language learners and try to figure out when they needed to come into reading intervention. She put some tracking things together on a computer, and so we started to think about how could we put a position together where we would have less variability in the testers. We'd have the same tester, we'd have somebody to do all the follow-up paperwork, and somebody who could interface with the reading intervention program, the newcomer. Now, she isn't a credentialed teacher, she's really an instructional support person to get us to the right instruction. So with the help of Elaine Alvarado and with Mike and Amy saying, yeah, they needed the same thing, we have Catherine Young, who is full-time with us in the 3 schools this year, and she does all the testing for us. If she needs I don't need an additional tester, obviously, but Cleveland did, because they started in the summer and they have huge groups. She trained another person who is actually one of our other reading intervention people, so that we have the same testers, and then we can have a common conversation going on with where those kids are. And she can also talk to us about variabilities in the kids' performance in the testing and take them another day, and so that has worked out fine. So that was a new expenditure for us, and so far the feedback from Amy and Mike and myself has been, this is really working well. So we'll work with Elaine on seeing how we want to make that position look maybe more stable or permanent. Let's see, what else can I tell you? As a principal, my goal has been to be in the classrooms a lot. And it's taken me some time as a principal, building a relationship with the staff, that I'm not in there just as a summative evaluator. I'm in there to be working with them. So when I go in, I'm often working with the kids so that I can then continue the conversation with the teachers about the students. So it's not just on the teaching, it's about the learning. And of course, that's an outgrowth, as you heard Gwen speak so eloquently. We really do have a great collaborative group working together as principals, looking at student engagement, and we're pulling that through into our, to my classroom observations, and reintroducing some of my staff members to the California teaching standards, and using that as a common conversation of what's going on, and then asking them to do that in that collaborative time that they're working on. We're constantly looking for new ways to intercede with kids who are at risk. We talk of the at-risk kids, but they're all individual kids. They can be the gate kids, it can be anybody who at times need help. The major components of our school site plan is to help, to do our early intervention for at-risk readers, to do our tutorials during and after school in reading and math, to reduce the adult-student ratio and provide ELD support on differentiated instruction using the instructional aids and the teacher tutors. The school counselor, as I mentioned, increase collaboration time as much as possible within the school day. And my point is it's not so that they can lock their doors at 2:45, but that it's so at the end of the day, they're not just needing to focus on prep for the next day or the next week, but that we can start looking a little bit long-term, not only for the whole year, but where else we want to move Roosevelt, and they still have some energy to do it. Although I will say that is one of our challenges is the instructional day, and the year is still too short. And I think I may have covered that at 6:30. But I may have skimmed over some things, so I'll leave it up to you for questions to clarify some things.
Thank you. Go ahead. Ms. Malka.
Was that too fast?
Already. How long do most kids stay in your newcomer program? And then,
Well, we try to move them out of newcomer into reading intervention. So
they go from
no
newcomer-
more than a year. Because the newcomer for us is the basic survival English, but we want them to be learning, so we move them right into reading interventions, which is the alphabet, sounds, so that they, move right into that, so they can start feeling success with the English language.
so no matter how old they are when they come in, it's about a year.
It could be less than that. We had a student who came to us last year as a second grader from Argentina that did not speak a word of English and scored proficient in the CSTs that spring. Now, mom was educated in Argentina, and they're educated in English and Spanish. In English, obviously. But the daughter knew nothing, and she came in second grade and went right up. So she wasn't in the newcomer program all that long at all. So we put her right in reading intervention. So it depends on the kid.
You started off with that you were going to do a reassessment of kids that after they're out of your program, out of your English language programs.
After we identify them from the CELD as fluent English proficient, there isn't a, we need to put something in to track them, to make sure they were continuing to make progress, and we wanted to make a goal for them. And their goal was that they would be basic in ELA within 1 year of classification. They really should be basic when they are reclassified. That doesn't always happen. And proficient within 2, giving us 1 more year. By the 3rd year, they should be proficient.
And what happens if they are
I don't know,
not?
we just put that goal in. We just put, I think that's when, well, we just put the goal in, so we didn't know yet. But I think based on my education in the years I've been in education and special education, when you start seeing children not respond to interventions, then you have to start saying, doesn't matter what language, perhaps there's there's something else going on here that we have to work on. And if you've got the family piece, and you've got the homework piece, and you've got the tutor, then you may be looking at a processing difficulty, no matter what language, visual processing, it may be a special education issue.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Noel.
My turn?
Sure. Or did I go the wrong way? Should it be Ms. Cordero?
It's okay.
Okay.
You don't want to always go from left to right or right to left. I wanted to ask about page 2 or 3 or.
Yeah, the pages on this.
Increased participation across demographic spectrum in advanced courses. This is referring to Latino participation in GATE programs.
Okay.
And it goes from 20304, 6 students, to 5, to 3, to 1, and 206, 07. What's happening here?
I think this is the one that the district gave us?
And that is district-wide, by the way, we're seeing that in every school. And that's speaking to the change in the test,
that
I'm going to
happened.
quote some of my teachers at the meeting that we had, because we're now in the gate referral process time, the week where the teachers and the parents refer. And my teacher said to me, what are we doing for our Latino students? Are we going to, what's the test? We used to give the Ravens, which is a it's not as language bound. I don't know Dr. Well, I could sit here and debate it for a long time. I think some of it has to do with the way we go about identifying, although I want to give Barbie and the committee kudos, because they work very hard at when students are a minority and they have taken the test and they're close but they don't make it, they do a portfolio assessment. And so we have been able to get some students identified and put in the GATE program that way.
What about white students in the GATE program? There's no data here, but I'd be interested in whether they've declined also.
We did make the testing more,
I think the numbers have declined across the district, no matter what socioeconomic group you're looking at.
That's correct.
And it's been since the date of the
But,
inception of the new
Then I have to ask
exam.
further question, what's going on?
One of the questions that Kate referred to is that we changed the test 2 years ago. It's much harder to qualify with the new COGAT version. So for 2 years, we've been seeing
Right.
this data, the same data.
A couple of years ago, there was, there was some talk about some hostility at Roosevelt about the GATE program. Reference to the, remember there was a memo that called it a brain drain or something like that?
And you know what? That was the first year that the new test came out. It was used. At my recollection, that was when I was new. I believe that was a direct correlation to that new test coming out, and there weren't as many kids that qualified. I do need to add that the elementary principals haven't received the memo that's coming out from our GATE program about that you have received about our change in policy for identifying English learners, and we're going to be using CST data and using, anyway, you will be getting it very soon. So we are addressing that, although that happens at after second grade and third, the testing, so it really will apply more at third. Right. We had it in a board brief memo recently.
Dr. Noel, when the brain drain, are you referring to the students who may be leaving to go to that school over in the Mesa?
It was a memo that had been sort of informally distributed. It was, yeah.
I got phone calls.
Oh. Well, we still do cluster. We cluster in language arts and we cluster in math. And I think if you look at the CST scores, we don't really have a brain drain because our kids are still achieving at high levels. I think what happened is the testing changed, so we don't have as many students identified as intellectually gifted, but that doesn't mean we don't have high achievers, and of course we do. And we put those students together in groups, and we work very hard at making sure that those groups look like the population at Roosevelt. So.
I guess it's I don't know if there's an appropriate place to ask the question, but there's a debate between whether gate admission should be a function of testing in measuring, the cognitive aptitude test, something like this, or a reflection of performance. The Japanese model is that they don't even pay attention to IQ, whatever that is. They just work hard. Mm-hmm. And at least in my teaching, there on many instances, I couldn't tell the difference between the bright kid and the kid who worked hard. Sometimes you can tell, and then you get the bright kid who works hard. But I just wonder whether there's something, whether the criteria have shifted away from judgments about the kid's performance and potential as distinct from how they test him. And that's, I guess, also a question for you, Rob.
I was going to say, without going to great detail here, Hayden does a wonderful demonstration of what it means to be gifted and the way gifted kids think. And so I would invite you to, he's given it to parents over time, and I know he would share that with you.
Reaction to his presentation, I got some of the phone calls.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
So
Anyway, it's another topic, a very interesting topic.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did have another
okay,
question.
you have another question?
A specifically Roosevelt question. I'm looking at the CELT scores by grade level, this chart, I have trouble
Yeah, they don't come out
reading
real.
these things.
It
but-
doesn't come out
Doesn't
well in
copy
black
as
and
well
gray.
as I'd like.
And see, maybe it's just that I'm not reading it properly, but if I take like the sixth grade in 2005, and it looks like 24% plus 47% were early advanced and advanced, okay? Then I look up at 2007, and I find that that figure has changed for sixth grade to 25 and 25, which is a very dramatic reduction.
Well, that would be a different group of kids. You'd have, if you followed, correct me if
Yeah,
I'm
of
wrong,
course, it's
Dave.
2 years difference, but all of our testing, when we do longitudinal analyses, has to do with.
Bob, I'd like to
different
address
kids.
that.
I'm sure there's an explanation for that.
There is one. When they renormed the test changed considerably. They renormed it last year. And so like one of the principals said, geez, you're saying my CELT scores went down, but I look at the mean scores, they all went up by like 50 points. And I had to point out to him that the mean for last year was like 450 and the mean for this year was like 480 or something like that. So the changing of the norm, then renorming made, so if you see in the board focus goals, you'll see that all the CELT scores only have one dot. And that's the reason why there is no longitudinal comparison anymore. There will be in the future years, but right now it's just one dot.
Well, there goes, that's an answer
Thank
to my
you.
question. Thank you. Had similar questions elsewhere.
Yeah,
Looking at, well, wait a minute now, the CST and mathematics, there's a big difference there too, between, this is in third grade, back on this page.
Okay.
Third grade in '05 and third grade in '07.
Probably should have given them.
Have I got that year right? Yeah, third grade.
You have something different
Yeah.
than this.
So are you comparing the third grade, this,
Well, 79% proficient in advance in '05 and 38% in '07, if I'm reading this right.
at the same grade level?
Third grade, yeah, third grade.
And one of the things is you're testing
I
a
just
different.
wonder what
Yeah.
it looks like, I look and say, what happened in third grade?
Well, from year to year, you're testing a different group of third graders, and last year, as I pointed out, we have this one grade level that's particularly vulnerable with special needs students. So that's one of the problems with the testing is it's hard to follow. You have to look at the same grade every year, but then you have different kids in the testing pool, which can also change the outcome as well. But it also does make the teachers sit and look, when we look at the results in each subcategory, to look at their curriculum to make sure that they haven't changed some of their teaching so that they haven't hit the standard, or they taught it in the beginning of the year and didn't review it again or pull it forward for more application as the year went through. So my teachers do look at that from year to year, so the third grade teachers will always look. It's not just about the kids, but it might be able to give you indications.
Yeah, well, that's sort of what I'm asking,
Yes.
because maybe there's some new teachers, maybe something changed in the program, and that's why I wanted to, if you had some insights into why it dropped from 79 to 36%, over a 2-year period.
Dr. Hayden? Yes.
There you go.
As you all know, there's a wide difference between how kids' cognitive abilities develop, especially in the younger grades. And since it's standards-based test, you could have the kids scoring quite well, let's say, in the third grade testing, and as they move into the fourth grade and the standards change to maybe a more deeper questions or something like that, you can have those kids not actually making that deeper level. So you can get...
I'm talking all third grade.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying is that as you go along...
I know they're different kids.
Yeah, as you go along, though, you will get wide varieties in those abilities. So that's part of the issue here, is that it's hard to, for small numbers and for year to year, they don't really like to see you make comparisons. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Well, I guess my question is, in more general terms, can you look at cross-sectional comparisons from years and make any inferences about something systemic, something about the instructional context, the personnel, something that has changed that makes the same grade level. I know that different.
The same grade level. I think you'd have to look at it over several years, and then you make something. But I would not want to make it just 1 year. You see a dip in that thing, you say, oh, the teacher really slacked off that year or something like that. I don't think you can do that. You'd have to see it over several years to make some kind of an issue like that.
Well, I was hoping maybe you knew something.
Well, I
you could
just
tell
know
us.
that I read a lot of articles about
Okay.
people all over the country concerned about how do you read the data from these tests under NCLB, and how do you make judgments, and how do you use it as a guide? And we do the best we can, but I think Dr. Hayden probably answered it the best. It can be a lot of variables.
Go ahead, Ms. Parker.
Hello.
Hi.
Just going back to the GATE program quickly, you were saying that you still cluster them together. Are you regrouping during the day to the extent that Peabody is? Do you regroup? I mean, do you regroup them for math if they're, math ability goes to one, in the upper grades? Let's just talk in the upper grades here.
I heard Kate's presentation, but I don't know what quantity of time.
What she was saying was that basically for the entire English language arts time, they're grouped by ability. For the entire math time, they're grouped by, and it could be different groupings.
Again, I'm going to use we use the same model we use for the ELD. We look at this kids' scores in the fall when we get them, when we come back. And it has worked out for the past couple of years that for math in 3rd grade through 6th, we regroup them for the entire math period. So GATE, high achieving, advanced kids where we can accelerate and compact the curriculum, those kids will be with one teacher, and the teachers rotate so that they may do it so that the same teacher isn't identified with that group. And so all teachers use their skills with all kids. That math, it's worked out pretty well in math. In language arts, it came out a little bit funny because we ended up with a grade level that was so proficient, we couldn't group them that way because they all needed, well, not all, but a majority of the grade level needed curriculum compacting and acceleration. So we clustered the GATE students in, and then what we did was we did some movement in that grade, but not a lot, and we did it for the whole language arts period. In the other grades, the teachers have found that clustering them in GATE high achieving groups and language groups, language facility group, English language facility groups, works for the actual teaching of reading, so that in the 3rd and 4th grade, when you still may be having children with the decoding issues, it works if you just do it for about an hour and 20 minutes. And for comprehension, but they found that they didn't need to do it for writing, and found that for writing, it actually works better to have a more heterogeneous group because you can do writer's workshop and you can bounce ideas off each other. So while they may not have the specific skills, the ideas are there. So I think every grade level does at least an hour and 20 minutes, but there's no grade level that does no, I take that back. The 6th grade do it for the entire language arts period.
Gotcha. A quick question on your mathematics achievement. It means a description of specific actions to improve educational practice in mathematics, the tasks, homework club, after-school tutorial, and the computer-assisted instruction. That's all paid for through your AB 825 money. Is that open to all students? I mean, how many students are able to participate in homework club and the after-school tutorial and computer-assisted instruction? It sounds like you maybe not quite there yet.
No, we're not. The computer-assisted instruction would be, we're trying to find a math program similar to what Brent described, where the kids would go through a station. So it would not only be for the accelerated students, but students who needed remediation. And we're trying to figure out, should we do that in the lab during their lab time, or should we do it in the classroom? So we're not quite there yet. That's a goal for us. The homework after-school tutorials, we're structured by who's at core and who's at risk. So anybody, it's by teacher recommendation or parent recommendation, so it's really open to everybody. Then we break it down.
Is that a daily after-school tutorial that's happening, or
Monday,
weekly?
some grade levels do it Monday and Wednesday, some grade levels only do it 1 day a week.
Okay.
The primary grades tend to do it 2 days a week. the higher we go. And I take it back, the fifth grade do language arts all, there's only 2 grade levels, there's 2 classes in that grade level, and they decided that this year, as last year, that it was more beneficial to group them for the entire language arts period.
Gotcha.
I know it's a sensitive subject, so I wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
everybody that's
Some
watching,
of
I
them,
got
"Wait
the
a
right
second."
information.
I was really surprised at your categorical funding. The amount that you had in for Title I and for your economic impact aid, I mean, I obviously I know economic impact aid came in late in the year, and this may include rollover money, but you have more money than Monroe. And that surprised me.
Well, let me just tell you that it was the impetus for me to stick with doing this web-based program, because the district puts the amounts on, and yes, it's there. It's
Yeah.
there.
Okay,
It's there to spend, and I'm not going to question it.
okay.
But,
But one
you
thing
know.
I really.
And I didn't look at the other people's
that'd be-
budget, so I don't
yeah,
know.
Yeah, we'll find out more about that. One thing that really interested me in your school district and community barriers to improvements in student achievement. Number 7, it's actually number 6, you're missing a number 6. Number 7, reliance on the learning center model to address needs of all special needs students. I actually liked your whole list. I found that really specific and very informative. But if you could talk more about that issue,
I would be happy to, and I did last year as well. And I have spent a number of years in and around special education, because when I did gifted support in Pennsylvania, gifted students in Pennsylvania are considered handicapped in the regular education classroom, so they came under the entire auspices of special education. So when I got to California, lo and behold, people said, "Oh, you know something about special education." But that's how I learned it. The Learning Center model I put in there actually last year, we had a couple of students whose needs we struggled to meet in the Learning Center model. Joanne Poley and I have had numerous discussions about this. I think it's a wonderful model. It works well for 98% of the students. Neighborhood schools, inclusion, mainstreaming, all that from Pennsylvania, I think it's wonderful. But occasionally, a student will walk onto your campus whose needs are so great that the services that we have in a regular education neighborhood school don't meet their needs. Interestingly, when I was looking at this and we were revising it, I don't have any of those students this year, and the difference in this drain on the time on all of the support personnel is palpable, and it's incredible, with going from 3 students who needed it to none. And then because of the process of when you get a student on your campus whose needs become more and more apparent and known, the process of getting those needs met and going through a mental health referral, the only other place that we really have, or Santa Barbara seems to have, is going to the county system. Now, we do have the Monroe class, the severely handicapped, which is, great addition. I believe we have a Roosevelt student there, actually. We do. And we have some other things, but I think I'm thinking of it more in terms of behavioral. My first 4 years in the state, I was in Ventura County, and I was in a small district where half of my time I was the special ed director for the district, and because we were small, we could not serve the needs of many of the students because we just didn't have the services, so I was very much involved in out-of-district placements. And in Ventura, there's a huge system called the Phoenix system, where there are students, if you can't serve them in your district, the SELPA had worked out this whole system where we could get the kids, particularly those who with behavioral and emotional needs, into a setting where there was all the service you need, full-time psychologists, full-time counselors, therapeutic counselors that were there. And when it came to Santa Barbara, it wasn't there. And of course, that was very different than also what we had in Pennsylvania as well. So that's that comment there is a reflection of my experience in the 30 years with special ed, my experience of Ventura and now in Santa Barbara. But the difference between last year and this year on Roosevelt's campus, because those 3 children are now in other placements, hopefully having their needs met.
Absolutely.
And it really made a difference, but you just don't know. And that's no reflection on special education, on our special ed department. They're wonderful. But what it's driving is the high demand for one-on-one aids, because that you can get immediately if you work hard enough. I mean, you can do that. And I don't know if that's, Joanne and I have talked about it endlessly, is that the best use of the money? And is is it the most effective program for the child?
Right.
But I'm certainly not, it's not a diminution of the Learning Center model. Actually, it works very well
For
for
most.
most students.
But probably not
Yeah,
all.
I think we just, either have to work with
Yeah.
SELPA or the surrounding districts, the smaller districts, to see if we can't come up with something else. We can't be,
Well, I thought that was a really interesting topic to touch on.
thank you.
Thanks.
Well, it can affect your overall.
Absolutely. Well, you want what's best for the kids, too,
Yeah.
so.
Of course.
Hey, can I just get a footnote before I forget it? Just reflecting on the discussion about the GATE program. And I guess I'm not convinced that kids are getting dumber. So I have to wonder why we're having this district-wide decline in GATE. And I just wanted to ask that in an appropriate venue, maybe that be addressed.
Actually, I
We
was.
should take that up. We don't think kids are getting dumber. We think they're getting smarter.
That's what I thought, too.
But I agree with you. It's probably an appropriate future agenda discussion, yeah.
Especially with our goal to get more Latino participation.
Absolutely.
To see those numbers go down is distressing.
Right. Good footnote.
Well, actually, I was going to ask a follow-up on that question, too. So this falls in with that. We said both the rate for white students and the rate for Latino students is declining, but I was wondering if they were declining at the same rate or if it's having a disproportionate impact on one versus the other.
They're both declining.
They're
but
both declining,
But at the same
but
rate is a good question.
Is it at the same, I mean, has the gap become intensified or not, or remain the same, et cetera?
We will bring you a report.
Yeah.
Good question.
And then I also just wanted to comment on your most recent response, because I appreciated hearing you say that the one-on-one aid is not always the best educational experience for every student. And I think sometimes we look at that based on the cost, which we are always concerned about, but also academically, it can be very, very successful for many students, but it's not always the best for.
Right, and it is, short of putting them in a private placement, it's the most restrictive setting because
Exactly.
they have someone with them all the time.
Ex-
And of course, we encourage the teams, the IEP teams, to put in a fade plan as well. But what happens is you're trying to fade and you find yourself trying to fade the aid for a year, and then you realize the needs are not something you're going to be able to remediate easily because the problems are much deeper than you wish they were for the child's sake.
Yeah. Well, I appreciated that. And getting back to some of the funding, and I think you touched on a lot of the things, but one of the questions I had, and it relates, I think, a little bit to some of the things you were saying, is you have identified for Title II Part A, teacher and principal training and recruiting, and you have this listed under, for staff development, that you want to identify areas of need in improving instructional program. And I was wondering, when you list here staff development, improvement of instructional strategies and materials, what specifically is that targeting?
I can use a recent example of our staff meeting on Tuesday. As I said, I reintroduced or brought out again the California teaching standards, which I use as part of the rubric for the evaluations. And we looked at it, and what we did was we broke into groups and looked at which of those standards do we feel we're strong in, and which do we feel we need to work on. And so then that discussion will then drive, okay, what are the staff development things that we need to do beyond what we're doing with ELD and the BITSA program, the other things that they're doing. Or-
Okay. So I guess my question, and I think
I don't know that I answered it
well,
quite.
I'm not sure that I'm asking a very clear question either, but I guess my question was, we look at Title II and it suggests training and recruiting, does this, and maybe I'm asking the wrong person, maybe it's a more general question, does this have to be new training, or can this be retraining in things that we've already been, had people trained in?
Right. Yes, it can be. In fact, a lot of sites use their Title II funding to pay for teachers to work after school or, on Saturdays, or to work collaboratively. So it's not always new training, because we really, as you know, have a really clear path for our training. We have only 2 really big focus areas. And so it's building on that. And the teacher collaboration is a huge part of it. And there may be little individual needs from time to time, but basically it's to support the district-wide focus areas.
And if I can clarify it a little bit further, for me, training is one thing. A new math program is adopted, new language arts, whatever, ELD. That's training. It doesn't matter where you are in your career path, something new, we all need to learn it, otherwise I'd still be using the typewriter. But then there's also professional growth, because as teachers, it's a flat career path, but we're learning more and more. So it was interesting to me that what came out of the discussion, because I have everybody first year to, 32nd year, that they still want to work on differentiating instruction, because the kids' needs, every year you get a different dynamic, you have to look at it differently. So I look at training as something we all need, doesn't matter what year you're in, but professional growth is, okay, you wouldn't expect a second-year teacher to be working at something that a 15th year teacher might be ready to tackle. Does that make sense?
Completely agree.
What?
I said I completely agree.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
An observation and one quick question. The observation is that Roosevelt's been using the Elk Grove model with enormous success for a number of years, and obviously it was a program that you inherited. And now we're making the push on not Roosevelt, but other school campuses to RTI. Have we stacked them up against one another? I mean, obviously, a school can implement a change, and it can be a great practice, and yet it's not always adopted by other schools. There's not always a push to force administrators to take on a particular practice. They may be addressing different things. One may not work may work for one set of problems and not for another, but why are we not looking at whether or not one model is working better than another?
I don't want to avoid the question, because I could go on for about half an hour. That, again, was one of the meetings we met with people from UCSB today about our response to intervention structures. I don't want to even call it a program, because it's really a process and a way in which you look at intervention. Roosevelt has a wonderful program, and the success is highly tied to a staff member there and building that. And yes, we've tried another model that's very similar, and we're developing our Santa Barbara Elementary intervention or response to intervention. We don't even know what we want to call it. It's really responding to the kids' needs and putting in intervention and assessment in a timely manner. But we'll talk, I will bring that back, because
Here's the question, and it's a quick one. On your summary page for your, the sign off from your site council.
Yes.
Or it's there. Well, I had it marked. Hang on. Yes, page 33. You have, it lists all the various committees, and the English Learner Advisory Committee, it's dated 5/26/2007. Typo, or have they not met so far this year?
No, ELAC met last week.
Okay.
It was our first meeting of the year.
Okay.
And what we did is, in May, we had a rough draft of where we wanted to go for next year. What our site council does in May and June is we gather our input from the other committee, from ELAC, is the major one, the parent surveys, teacher surveys. And then we do a draft, but we don't know the budget yet. So we decide which programs we probably want to continue, which ones we don't. And what I did was, because I didn't know when we would have to do the presentations, we got ELAC to, we had ELAC input at that point. We have not brought it back to ELAC because the timing didn't work. So I didn't want to fudge the date. That's the last time we got ELAC input.
Okay, but you will be bringing it back to them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now we are on to Adams and then Washington, and I appreciate everybody's patience.
Yes. Okay, Marge Variano, new principal at Adams.
Well, we started about 4 hours ago, and Brett said good afternoon, or 3 hours ago. So I'll say good evening. And I wanted to say I really appreciated Kate's comment when she said what a difference a year makes, because I hope to be sitting here next year saying the same thing. We've had a number of unexpected challenges at Adams so far this year, but we're going all in the right direction. And I also want to thank Pat Morales, who really helped me understand what was really required in the site plan and go over and do that. She's terrific. I'm going to start with our vision, because Adams this year, the teachers and I met at the beginning of the year and talked about what we wanted to see as a vision for Adams. And we came up with, we really want everyone that walks through the door to want to be there every day and be happy to be there every day, and to be continually learning and growing socially, emotionally, and academically. And wanted to be that every staff member in our building was making a positive contribution to the students and to the community. And so everything we're doing is really going towards that vision, towards that goal. So our focus goals are two. We're looking at improving student achievement for everyone in English language arts, focusing certainly on our English language development program. And after reviewing the data, we really had a weakness in the area of writing. So we're certainly focusing on the area of writing. And the other area we're focusing on is our learning environment. One of the things we talked about with the staff when I was learning about the school was what type of obstacles do we have in order to improve student achievement. And oftentimes it came out with behaviors, with teachers focusing a lot on the learning environment during the day, with children wanting to come to school, not wanting to come to school. So we really wanted to focus on having a positive and productive learning environment. You all know Adams better than I do, so I'm going to eliminate some of the profile stuff. When we looked at our goals, we decided what were the obstacles that we faced. And we call them barriers here, but what were the obstacles that we had to overcome in order to achieve our goals? Certainly we have a high percentage of English language learners, also have a high percentage of non-English speaking parents and guardians. We have a large special education population and a very small special education staff. A number of our special education students come from outside the school boundaries, and it makes it very difficult to be able to service those children with a limited number of staff members. We have limited funding. We certainly can't fundraise the way some of the other schools are able to fundraise. So our funding limitations are much greater. We also had some deficits last year, so we did not get some of the carryover money that some of the other schools received because of some of those deficits. So we did have quite limited funding this year, which makes it difficult to hire the staff needed to work with the at-risk students. It also inhibits us from having the funds to hire more administrative staff. My area of expertise certainly is curriculum development, certainly working with written programs and worked with the staff and done a lot of in-services, and the amount of things that I have to do as an administrator doesn't allow me the time to be able to focus on the areas that I'd like to focus on. You hear when we have a curriculum development person and an assistant principal at the school, boy, would I love to have that. That would make things just that much more wonderful. The time for staff development, we talked about the early release days, and I have the same types of issues where they're not, those are days that I can't necessarily use for staff development. I did have a staff development on one early release day, and it was almost 90% attended voluntarily, but I did have the staff later say, please don't do that again. We really need that time to work together or do other things. You know, they're being asked to do a lot and feel as if they need that time for other things. So looking for the time for staff development, we've talked about that quite a bit. Having before and after school intervention programs, that certainly is an obstacle because of the transportation and the funding. The size and physical layout of the school. It's difficult for me to go from the office to the classroom, to one classroom in the back. Sometimes it'll take just 10 minutes to walk there. So that certainly has an impact on my ability to get to all the different classrooms. Our wiring is so old, our buildings are so old, our kindergarten doesn't have internet wiring, which certainly has an impact on being able to do some of the programs that we want to do. And just having the funding to purchase the assessment literacy materials that we want, and providing substitute teachers for instructional assistants, office staff, all types of, when people are out, we don't have the staff to be able to fill those positions. So we're pulling people from different places, which makes life a little more difficult. So we looked at how do we overcome those obstacles. Those are the obstacles we identified. What do we need to do to overcome those obstacles and become successful? And we're doing a lot of things that are addressing those areas of concern. We are implementing the systematic method of teaching English language development and going to start working more and more with the TOSAs, with the teachers on special assignment. They've been great, and our teachers haven't taken advantage of it as much as we would like to, and they're going to start doing that in the near future. We've hired tutors and aides to provide small group and individual instruction. We've hired an additional teacher to lower the class sizes and eliminate the need for having combination classes at the upper grades from 4 through 6. There's a computer lab technician. She supervises and monitors the students in the lab. And we're also having a second lab. We've been looking at getting computers for a second lab. We're really close to being able to get one of the businesses to donate the computers, and I've been out soliciting to get donated computers. And so we're going to have a second lab that's going to be available for our upper grades, one of the programs I'll talk about in a little bit. We are putting in a comprehensive staff development program, and this is being implemented with grade level teams, vertical teams, whole group. Last week I did an in-service on behavior management and developing behavior plans for students and how to implement those behavior plans and addressing some of the needs of some of our students, identifying some of the things that cause the behaviors and what types of things we can do in order to address and extinguish the behaviors that we don't want to see. We're having parenting classes and after school. There's social groups that are being taught during the school day to address some of those needs. I'm also teaching a youth leadership program, which I'll talk about in a bit. And there's proposals for piloting we had a proposal and it was approved for piloting the Success Maker, which I'll talk about. And we've put a lot of staff development. We put a lot of the money towards staff development time to releasing the teachers and being able to do that staff development. If you look at the data, and I kind of broke it down a little bit differently, just because I was interested also in trying to find out what was going on and what areas we had to look at. The really glaring thing that came out looking at the data when I did some further analysis was that the writing and reading comprehension was weak across the grade levels. So that's certainly an area that we have to look at. And looking at just what I'm seeing in the school and looking at based on my knowledge, really with our English language learners, a lot of them, the programs that they're using are focusing a lot on fluency, and they're doing fluency tests at grade level. So a fourth grader that's a weak student is reading at a fourth grade level to see what their fluency level is, to see how fast they can read a passage that may be very difficult for them. So that's a lot of the focus on how they're doing in their fluency, but they may not, and certainly oftentimes are not comprehending what they're reading. So we're looking at how are we going to address that and what type of programs, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But going through some of this data, I mean, there's some interesting things that came out of it. You know, this group of girls did very well in math. This group of boys did really poorly in English language arts. And now we need to work with the groups to see, is there some reason for some of this, and what can we do in order to address this? So we found some of the information, and now we need to further look into what do we do to address some of those things. We have 2 SMART goals, again, to 80% of the ELL students each grade to gain 1 level in proficiency on the CELT, and we're also putting in a writing goal. And there's school-wide assessments that we're using for writing, and we're looking for children to improve on the rubric scoring. As far as professional development, that's really where we're focusing, and I think really needs to be focused the most. And the staff is very willing and excited about learning a lot and being able to address some of the issues that they have. So we've looked at what types of things are they interested in learning, what types of things they feel that they have strengths in that they can share with the staff, and where are the areas of weakness, and why are we seeing some of the results that we're seeing? Why are we seeing some of the positive results? Why are we seeing some of the negative results? So we're doing, at staff meetings, we're doing professional development. I've just been able to get a hold of developmental reading assessments, which is a program I helped develop a long time ago, but it's a program that the children are assessed in reading, and we find their reading level. And not only do we find their reading level, but we also find out what are their areas of weaknesses, what strengths do they have as a reader, what type of strategies do they use when they're reading and when they're retelling and having comprehension. And once we're able to find that, there's the next step. So now that you know that, now what do we do? So this program also has just, we know the child is weak in this area. What types of things can you do in order to assist that child? We always want assessment to be able to inform instruction, and oftentimes assessment doesn't do that. It just gives us a number, and we know the child is, 75% is information. Okay, so what does that mean? How do we want the child to know 100% of the information. So this program really helps with being able to say, what do we do next? Right now I'm assessing the students that we've identified through SST that we may need some further information until I'm able to train the teachers. So the teachers are sitting with me while I do the assessment so they can better understand what the assessment's like and gain the understanding of what we're trying to get out of this from the students. I've also taught some writers' workshop programs and doing some training on those. The instructional media, the county ed department has a wonderful program where they come in and do some in-services for computer literacy and working with the teachers on what is available to them out on the internet that they can use in their classroom. So we're going to be working with them very closely. And we're going to do a lot of data analysis and talk about differentiating instruction, reading instruction, behavior management. We've started a lot of those things, and they're also working through the AVID training. As my role as a school leader, certainly I'd like to focus all of my time on instructional leadership. And at this point, I get to focus very little of my time in instructional leadership. And hopefully, like I say, next year I'll be able to say what a difference a year makes. Now that's going to be happening. But I'd like to, I've never spent so much time in my office ever in my life. I've always spent lots of times in the classroom, and right now that's difficult with all the challenges we're facing. But that's my goal, is to get into the classrooms regularly, talking to the teachers, talking to the students, meeting with grade levels, focusing on increasing student achievement, monitoring the programs and the curriculum instruction, doing some modeling and developing, doing some professional development with the students, and promoting the collaboration and teamwork with the staff, and working with the parents and the community members to build those strong alliances which helps support the students. The things that we're doing in order to address our goals of improving achievement in English language arts, we're certainly working with the professional development, and I think that really is key for our staff and our teaching assistants. We're using technology-based intervention. We just started full-time with the Waterford program. Waterford is a program I'm very familiar with. I worked with it 25 years ago and was on the team to redevelop it after this first implementation. It is truly a wonderful program. It's very differentiated. It really addresses each child at their level of understanding and based on their individual needs. We've seen success, and we've had all our ups and downs. The system's working slowly. Today it was broken, but we're getting there. Old technology, old buildings, old wiring, all these things are some of our obstacles, but we're overcoming them. So we're working with the Waterford program, and we're also just starting to pilot Success Maker. And Success Maker is also a Pearson product, and Success Maker is for all subject areas, but it is focused on English language arts and math. And it's really geared, it's a K-6 program, but it's not as cartoonish as the Waterford program. So the children, and it doesn't only address interventions, it also accelerates learning too. So it is very differentiated, and it takes each child from where they are now to the next step. So a child that's accelerated will also be accelerated, a child that has weaknesses. So it's certainly going to be a program that we're excited about piloting and finding out how successful it is. Research really shows great promise for it, so we're excited about using it. Our instructional assistants are working with our at-risk students. They're working in the classrooms, pulling students, working in small groups. We are working with our student success team, our SST, and I found that very interesting the first few times, and it really is a good collaboration of people working and trying to address the needs of the students and trying to help the teachers support those students. We have literacy volunteers that work with the students in the classrooms, pulling the students, working with them sometimes outside of the school day. We have just started an after-school reading program, actually was addressing our younger students get out at 2:30, our older students don't get out until 3 o'clock, and those siblings that need to travel with their older brothers and sisters, we wanted to put into a program that wasn't just babysitting. And we are utilizing our AmeriCorps volunteers, who are absolutely wonderful. I have two of the best AmeriCorps volunteers in the world. They're great. They're actually doing a reading program with the students, where they're have the students in the library for that half hour. They're reading them stories, and they're doing predictions with them, bringing out prior knowledge, and they're doing comprehension with the students, and they're getting exposed to more literacy. We're also started, I think yesterday, our before and after school Waterford program. So Waterford has to be implemented every day. There's only so much time in the day, and with one lab, it's really difficult. So we're trying to get as many children into that lab as possible. So we do have a before school program where parents can drop the children off at 7 o'clock, and if they have to leave for work earlier. So now we're bringing some of those children into the lab. In addition, we're pulling some of the children that are after school into the lab for after school, and if parents would like to drop off or pick up their students, they can participate in a Waterford program after school. Hopefully, once we get Success Maker, we'll be able to do a similar thing with Success Maker, and we'd like to start including some adults in that program too. We have our after-school evening tutorial program, where the parents that are non-English speakers come in, and they have English tutorials, and we have the students that are working and getting homework help during that time. So we're going to be looking at using the Waterford program or the Success Maker with those parents as well, to see if that's something that would be beneficial. There's the teachers are doing small group interventions in some of the upper grade classes. And again, the developmental reading assessment really is something that we're hoping that we can bring across the grade levels. Right now, sometimes children are reading on frustration level. They're not reading on their instructional level, which all the research shows that students need to read on their instructional level in order to improve their reading skills and not get frustrated. So we want to be able to find a tool that's going to be engaging and give teachers that information that they can use. In order to address the goal of the learning environment, we sat together the first day of school. The teachers and I really focused on this. What do we want for expectations? What do we want to carry out with consistency? What do we want our children to know that I expect, their teacher expects, their lunch monitor expects, that we're all going to follow through exactly the same way? And we came up with a code of conduct that we all agreed to. The first day of school, we had an assembly where I presented that code of conduct to the students and explained why we felt as if that we were going to be following through and what we were going to follow through with consistency. It was really interesting. One of the things we talked about was, since we are such a spread out campus, when they go from one place to another and they're talking in the halls, they're interrupting the other classes. I said, how many people were sitting there taking a test or something else and were disrupted because there was so much noise in the hallway? And the children really identified that themselves, that they were having a negative impact on the learning environment, not even realizing it. So we're following through with that with consistency, and making sure there's respect, and all the other things are involved in having our code of conduct followed through, and we are following it through with consistency. We have a Caught Being Good program where any staff member, if they catch a child doing something that they feel is an extra good deed or something that was unexpected, they give them a little ticket. We announce on the morning announcements those children that were caught being good, and then they also get, at the end of the month, I pick out 5 children and I take them out to lunch as part of that program. So it's fun for me too. We have the social skills group. Our FSA counselors are leading. They do counseling with individual children. This year we looked at doing some other things, and we're doing the social skills group with some children. We also have groups of children that have different problems interacting, so they're doing special groups with those children, doing it for 10 weeks, and then picking up other children. The accountability report, when students come into the office, I always tell them they understand that there's the object is that they probably came into the office because they made a bad decision. They need to explain what that was. Be honest about it, take accountability for it. If they're honest, the consequence is always far less. And then they go forward from there. So we have an accountability report that's sent home to the parents. The students have to fill it out. Why were they in the office? And there are some prizes and stuff that go along with that at the end. Once children have been able to identify the problems and they've extinguished poor behavior, we put together a program where there are some rewards for that as well. So we're using some funding for that. We're still using the Character Counts program, which has been very successful in having assemblies with that. And the parenting classes are starting in our school for the first time, and we're real excited about that. We're doing, our first round is going to be Spanish-speaking parents. It's all going to be done in Spanish. And then second time, we're going to do another round of parenting classes for English-speaking parents. And teachers have identified parents that they think might need some support and might need some help, identify children that may or may not be making good decisions, and then parents can volunteer if they'd like to be part of those classes. We're also going to be providing transportation for those classes as well. And then finally, I'm doing a youth leadership program with the students. We're identifying 20 students that'll be working for 16 weeks, 2.5 hours. And after school on a Monday, they're going to be working with me on a youth leadership program. And it's goal setting and identifying what they'd like to achieve, and being able to set those goals and identify leadership skills. And it's a wonderful program. If you'd ever like to stop in, please do so. And I think that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Cordero.
Just a real quick follow-up on the last thing you said. You talked about the youth leadership group that you'll be working with. How are those students going to be identified?
The teachers, actually, we're doing 5th and 6th grade students, and the teachers and I came up with different types of criteria. We want students that we really feel as if have some leadership skills that could be positive influences on other students, and also children that may have the potential of going in the wrong direction, making poor choices, and that we feel as if at this point they're so young, we have an opportunity with them to be able to steer them in the right direction.
Okay. And I'll try to get back to the money issues, because I know that's what you want us to focus on. You talked a lot. One of the things I was looking through is I had wanted to ask you about the parent participation part, and you mentioned a lot of programs that you have in place with parenting classes after school. You mentioned social groups going on during the day. You mentioned after-school tutorials, English tutorials, where parents might be able to participate. But I didn't see anything in which it looked like you were allocating any funds for that. So I was wondering, how are those things funded?
The parenting classes are funded through the site funds, and I'm not sure exactly where it is in here, but they are funded through site funds, along with the transportation. The social skills, the FSA counselors are funded through our discretionary funds, and the FSA counselors are the ones that are leading the social skills groups. And so they are funded through.
Okay, so social skills groups. Okay, I misunderstood when you were saying that. Thank you. Okay, I think that's the only one that I had specifically related to funding.
I noticed how delicate you were being as you talked about that youth leadership program, Ms. Variano, since she has asked my son to participate. La la la.
Yeah, see, I was actually sitting here thinking, no assistant principal, but you have a board member at your school.
Can she get me an assistant principal and curriculum development person?
It doesn't work
And
that
some
way.
of the funds from Monroe.
Doesn't work that way. But good try.
Success Maker, what grade levels are going to be participating in that?
We're gonna do 3 through 6 right
through
now,
6.
because K through 1 is using the Waterford program.
So is it going to be a daily program also, or once a
It's
week?
another program that research says children that participate every day have far greater success, so yes.
Okay. And for the writing program, are you using the coherent writing program that is happening at some of the other places?
No,
or
we're not
no?
using a specific writing program at this point. That's something that our team is looking at, our site-based team. I've taught Writers' Workshop across the country to different groups and found that very successful. But we're going to look at a lot of the different programs. I'm not familiar with the program that Robin's talked about, and we're going to start learning about that at our administrative council.
Okay.
And that will go nicely with Writers' Workshop. It's professional development about the different genres, and so it'll go right with
So
it.
work with it, okay. Some of the other schools have been putting together, have been spending some of their categorical funding on Teachers Institutes during the summer where they spend 3 or 5 days together. Is that anything that Adams is
Yeah,
talking about?
that's in our plan, that
Is?
we're going to do a week-long summer institute with the
Okay.
teachers. So there's funding allocated in the plan for that.
Okay.
Why do I feel like?
Oh, there it is, I see. The title on Teacher Hourly Institute, that's what that is?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is it going to be for 3 days, or what are you thinking?
The funding is for 5 days.
It's a 5-day one.
But we'll see what the schedule allows and what the teachers are up for, and depending on if we're starting the school year earlier than we had thought, that might not work the way we thought it was going to.
Are you planning it for the, as soon as school gets out?
That was the original
idea.
plan.
Okay, just
Mhm.
obviously everything's tentative.
And that
Okay.
might cut summer really short.
Thank you, that's it.
Go ahead, Ms. Malco.
It's called the
Success Maker.
Is that going to be on, or is it on your same old computers, those old?
Well, that's why, the plan is, they're going to put it on the computers that we have currently, but there really isn't enough time in the day to use those computers for that. But the pilot, we've already gotten the pilot for this school year, so we want to use it before we get, run out of time. But we are hoping that after we come back from Thanksgiving, we'll have donated computers.
That sounds wonderful. That's my only
Keep your
question.
fingers crossed.
That's it.
Yay.
Asked and answered.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Now you have the second, the newest, and you get the newest principal.
But we look forward to next year. Actually, it raises a question not to be addressed here necessarily, but both Ms. Variano's and Mr. Barnett's, summaries, discussed being a new principal in the district and the levels of district support that they are not receiving. And, I cast no aspersions. I just think it's something that we need to think about and talk about.
Yeah, one thing they both have is access to Pat Morales as far as coaching and getting them on board with, district policies. But some of the other obstacles, obviously, Pat can't address.
Right, okay.
We need more support.
Okay, we have our newest principal, Damian Barnett, at Washington Elementary. Although he's not a brand new principal, he's got lots of experience.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. One interruption. Really fascinating looking
I'll go
at-
ahead and answer for her. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, good. No, when you look at the APEG growth scores, Adams has the only graph where all the lines essentially come together. On most of them, you have low-achieving Latino students, high-achieving white students, and then the school-wide is somewhere in between. And this is the only, it's granted, it's a small percentage of white students, but it still all comes together. Only one. There you go.
Well, I want to start tonight just by saying how much fun I've been having the last couple of months, because it's just really been great. And I know that Mrs. Harder and Brian Sarvis came out, and I think it was my 4th day, and it's always really cool, like, show us around, who's teaching where? And I'm like, great, well, in here we have, this is a 2nd grade classroom. And then I conveniently had a kid break his arm, and that saved me from the whole thing. No, it's been really great. Washington has an incredible amount of strengths. And it just being the new person and learning how the systems work and seeing where I can plug in and where we can really move forward has just been really a thrill. And so I'm just want to say how excited I am to be at Washington, how excited I am that people have come out to visit, Dr. Malakoff, Mrs. Parker as well. It was just great to talk with you, and please feel free anytime, because I enjoy talking about my school and how great it is. So I'm excited to be here tonight. I really want to start with just really the strengths that I've seen in the last few months, and I think 2 of the biggest strengths at Washington really are the teachers there, and I think just in everything that Washington's been through in the last couple of years, and it's continued to make progress and to move forward, and that's a real testament to the strength of the teaching staff there and the strength of the program. And it's also, I really attribute the strength of the parent-teacher organization there, and the PTO is just incredibly strong, incredibly supportive, incredibly excited about the school, just has a completely can-do attitude, and that matches the staff's can-do attitude, and I think the school is just ready to move forward at any time. I mean, they are moving forward now, and so, I mean, just coming in, it's like, they were just like, well, let's go, we're ready, and so that's just been really fantastic. I'd add to that my ELAC as well. They had some really specific goals that they had laid out last year, and they were quick to meet with me right when I got on board to make sure that they followed through on those goals. One of the goals for the ELAC group was to have a parenting class, which we've done and we've implemented, and they committed to 10 weeks in a row of a 3-hour class that goes on Tuesday nights from 6 to 9 o'clock, and I have 21 couples that are participating in that, and it's just been fantastic, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Their participation in our carnival that just happened a couple of weeks ago, ideas of ways that we can get help to parents to help their students with their homework, things like that. They've just been fantastic. So really my teaching staff, my PTO, my ELAC are all phenomenal, and I think a big testament to the reason that Washington continues to move forward. We also have a teacher-tutor program that's been in place for a long time. I think that's one of its strengths, working with a wide range of students, both as an intervention program and in certain situations as an enrichment program. We do have an after-school homework and tutorial program. We have the PTO supports a PE specialist, a science specialist, a music specialist, and an art specialist, and that's all contributes to the strength of the program for sure. I think our GATE program helps tremendously at our school, and I think that sometimes we don't communicate that they're part of Washington School as well and contribute to the strength of that program, absolutely. I mean, we don't say that out loud so many times. I think we should. And we also have a counselor that works on campus, and I just think that that's another huge piece. We have a lot of students who benefit greatly from not only the psychologist who comes on, but actual counseling, dealing with the different kind of family issues that can come up. When I got there, some of the challenges which they had really already started to address was really time in the day, and how can teachers have time to talk about teaching and learning within the school day. And so we've implemented a late start Friday program, and tomorrow will be our third one. And so it's gone very smoothly, and we've had about 250 students who opt to come on that Friday, and we've generated a program for them to participate in if they come. We also encourage people to surf at Ledbetter or sleep in or have breakfast, whatever it might be. That's also acceptable. And so we're starting school at 9:25, and that's been just a real benefit already. And myself and my leadership team are organizing what those Fridays look like, and it's a variety of things that range from grade level meetings to it's a time for my site council to meet, it's a time for the technology committee to meet. It really allows the staff to share all the responsibilities across the school during that time, and that was one of the goals that the staff had, was to have a time in which every staff member would be there, be a part of it, and be available in order to participate in the variety of activities that a school requires from its staff. So that's been an exciting piece. We also are implementing a systematic ELD program, so at every grade level we're doing 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week depending on the grade level. And again, that's really introduced the concept of flexible grouping, which isn't a new concept by any means, but it's I think further developed at some other schools. And what's really happening now at each grade level is that our EL students are working on ELD instruction at a certain grade level with a teacher that's specifically targeting that, and then the rest of the students are doing enrichment programs during that time as well. So they're sort of ability grouping during that time, and that's sort of answering several challenges that we had in order to do that. We also use our categorical funds, and we have an ELD teacher on staff who works with those teachers to help keep that ELD lessons on track, and she also works with our newcomers as well. And so that's another member of that team. Another challenge I think that has come up already has just been the identification of GATE students across the district, and just it's something that we're talking about a lot at Washington about what's the best way for identification, and it sounds like that will be a future board meeting, so I won't go off on that because I did have some things to talk about.
Please come back.
I know, yeah. I was like, when you said that, I'm like, I'll get an invitation, I'm sure. The data, Washington Schools met all of its AYP goals for all of its subgroups in both English, language arts, and math last year. And our English learners continue to make AYP gains in English language arts, and that's a multi-year trend. And Washington Schools English learners continue to meet AYP targets in both ELA and math, which is what I said in the beginning, I guess. But I think that's an important goal, and I think if you look at the long data on there, 4 years ago or 5 years ago, we were looking at 11% proficiency, and now we're almost at 35% proficiency, and that's the kind of growth, I think, that is phenomenal. And I think that that's, again, a real tribute to the focus that the teaching staff has taken on that group, and I think we're even more focused on that now with our eye to, the ever-increasing stepping of AYP in the coming years, and we know we need to step up and continue to make that a top priority, and so you see a lot of things in our plan. In terms of professional development, we've taken advantage of the ELTOSAs. I think it's been fantastic. They were out to my site and then recruited all of my people to come to their, what do you call it, the boot camp or whatever it is, Make and Take Center. Anyway, they were fantastic, and I just think it's an excellent resource from the district that our school has greatly appreciated, and I think it merges well with the work that we're already doing there. We're focused also on the writing project. Robin's mentioned several times the Coherent Writing Project, which I'm looking forward to being trained in the summer, so I can really know what I'm talking about, but I'll just wing it from here. All of my third grade has been trained in the Coherent Writing Project, and I have 2 teachers at least that have been trained in that program, and so all of them are implementing those strategies and developing the rubrics, and we've set some really high goals in that area in terms of the rubric, and what we're looking forward to as the year goes on, again, meeting with Carpinteria to talk about exactly how they're using the rubric and breaking the genres down into the different grade levels and getting that work done, because we feel like writing across the board is one of the, if students can think it, they should be able to write it, and that's an area that we still see opportunities for growth. Along with our reading comprehension and vocabulary, we're starting just focusing in on academic vocabulary and what that really means across the board, and how that's very different than the kind of vocabulary that we traditionally used to teach, which I think was much more sort of SAT prep kind of vocabulary, and instead of what the kind of words that students really need to know and understand in order to be able to demonstrate what they know in the classroom. So I think that those really are those are really the goals: the reading comprehension, the writing, working in our ELD, finding time in order to meet together to talk about teaching and learning. And I mentioned in the plan, which you've had a chance to look at, that really that time is about answering the 4 questions around the professional learning community, and we're really set on doing that and pulling together what we already know, trying to figure out what it is that we need to know, and then being able to move forward and get the information on which we need to know. So with all of that, any questions?
Go ahead, Ms. Parker.
I have kids I have to put to bed in 15 minutes.
That's okay. Kate left one of her kids just like stranded on another part of town, so you're in good company.
Yes, absolutely. At least I'm getting to sleep through the night, which I have a feeling you don't
I
get to
don't.
do. As
Any
much.
minute my phone will go off and my wife will say, "Need help," and I'll just and the bat signal will go up. I live like 2 blocks.
I do think
so.
it's a point to make
Yeah.
that you started off at Washington with a brand new baby.
Yes.
Also, that's quite something. Maybe Dr. Hayden can help me with this one, because again, I was really surprised at the money situation here. For the demographics for all the schools, socioeconomically disadvantaged was not included on that top bar.
The data in that top bar, the green bar?
Yeah.
Isn't that, oh, you're saying it wasn't included.
None of the schools have socioeconomically disadvantaged listed.
Yes, that data is actually 2 days old, straight from the Student Information System. So that's actually 07, 08 current data, and SED is a complicated formula. You have to merge 2 different variables. I just didn't have time to do it. It
so
will be included eventually.
Okay. Well, obviously it's a statistically significant number, because that's what shows on their statewide targets, but you appear to have had no Title I money.
No.
That's right, and Robin can talk about that.
What happened?
There are not, well, according to last year's CONAP, there are not 35% of their kids that are at free and reduced lunch. So they are not Title I school as of this year.
So they get nothing?
They were grandfathered in last year, actually. There was 1 year that we grandfathered them, and I believe we spoke about that at Single Plan for Student Achievement presentations, right.
If you'd like to refer to this sheet, last year they were running at 33%. socioeconomic
Right, so they
disadvantage.
just missed it.
You went
That's a
from,
big hit to take.
it was 46,000, because last year Washington got 46,000.
Yes, and Damien found out about that not too long ago. He did an amazing job in taking care of that.
Well, it must be nice to have a PTO that can help with some things there too.
Absolutely, their support is invaluable.
Great.
But I think that's an important thing for us to look at that percentage too, because I'm
2%, I mean, 2% can't be that many students to
Right.
try and squeeze into the formula.
yeah. So that'll be one of my goals, is to make sure everybody fills out that. fee and
Absolutely.
reduce
It's
lunch
important,
costs.
absolutely, yeah.
That could be one of the
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
So interesting to hear about your late start Fridays. It's actually been really interesting to hear everybody across the board talk about staff and what they're willing to do. I'm assuming this is a voluntary time on Friday mornings.
No, it's part of their day.
It's part of their day.
And I think that's one of the advantages of it being inside of that time. So.
But it's a late start Friday, and yet Monroe has an early release Wednesday on a weekly basis, and it's voluntary. I mean, they've added instructional minutes on the other days, haven't they?
This is probably yet another one of those issues for another time, and it's the interpretation by our SPTA group about what is instructional time and what is the professional day of the teacher. Different staffs have agreed to do things a little differently.
Yes,
I'll just leave it at that.
because, I mean, it's really, I know you've just started, and it sounds like it's gotten off on the right foot, and I sincerely hope that that's the way it continues, because that's exactly what I know that we all want to hear is happening at these kinds of times.
One difference in that is that there are enrichment classes going on the whole time. I mean, students can arrive at the same time. That's different than the early release, in that there are, of course, the tutorial programs and all of that in place, but there's not the opportunity for all kids to stay longer. So I'm assuming that that's a different interpretation of the day.
Well,
it's a fine line.
It's beyond fine to me, because,
Yes.
they're not responsible for students
Exactly.
at that time.
No,
It's not
that's
instructional minutes, is it?
And I think it's fantastic to have an early release program where, I mean, you're doing all these other things as well for the students. I mean, we got a chance to hear a little bit more in depth when Dr. Malikoff and I were there than what you've presented this evening. But I mean, it's a huge enrichment program, but just a great intervention program for that Friday morning as well. So it's so much for the students and so much separately for the staff.
right. So much for the staff, exactly.
So I'm really excited about it, and look forward to seeing how that works out over time.
Great.
And that's it for me.
Go ahead.
Actually, I'll wait till next year to ask you questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no kidding. Actually, I had written myself a note about the Title I. Oh, I'm
No, go
sorry.
ahead, go ahead.
No, go, Annette. I'm sorry. I'll organize myself then.
I actually am also of the mind to go very easy on you today. I know, I teach at Santa Barbara City College, and our first year, we kind of get a buy on things, so you kind of do that too. But I did just want to ask you a quick question about, you said that ELAC had identified specific goals, and one of them was a parenting class. Were there any others that you think are particularly, important, or that you thought, you might be putting into place, or?
I think the second most important goal that is really important that we are going to put into place is, especially in the lower grades, the homework packets come home every week, and a lot of times the parents feel like they are not quite sure how to help their student, with those, because the homework itself is in English. And even though sometimes when the instructions are in Spanish and English, there are still questions that the parents have about the homework packet, like what exactly needs to happen here so that I can make sure that my student is successful on that. So one of the things that they really want to do is to identify sort of a parent in each classroom, and we're going to focus on K2 in the beginning, who's willing to be like a contact parent for the ELAC parents as a whole. And then they're going to come on a Tuesday morning, and we're going to do 15-minute sort of overviews of what the homework packet is in Spanish. So they'll say, okay, your teacher yesterday, you got this packet, here are the 5 things in it, this is what you need to do, if you have any questions, here they are. We'd like to do we'd like to record, if they want, we want to record like the spelling test for that week on CD. I mean, one of the issues that we hear a lot of times is that they'll practice at home, but even with the accent being slightly different, when the student comes to the classroom and hears the words being pronounced in a slightly different way, it can throw the student off. So we just want to provide as many resources as we can for those parents in order to be engaged with their student around the issue of homework. And that's something they've asked us for. And so, you know, it's our challenge to figure out a structure that works for them within their schedules and all of that sort of thing. So if there's one parent from each classroom who's willing to do that, then any other parent who has a question can call that parent directly and then have that conversation in Spanish about, you know, okay, what exactly needs to get done here so that they can get those things done. So right now what we're doing is collecting those volunteers from each of those grade levels, and I said we're going to start in K2, and then we're going to start those sort of overview sessions, and I have a instructional aide who's willing to do that in the time that she has. So we're going to go like 7:45 to 8:30 running the different grade levels at different times.
That's fantastic. I love that idea.
Not mine.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's a very involved committee who really wants to be part of the community, is part of the community, and it's just fantastic. So.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm ready now. First, I want to tell you how much I appreciate what you said at the very start of your presentation, which was talking about your GATE students and how, you know, people may not realize it, but they're an integral part of your community.
Absolutely.
And actually, it's really refreshing to hear that, because I have to tell you, the rest of the community perceives Washington as being all about their GATE community. So I think that that's really important to hear from the principal's perspective. That it's a much bigger community than just the GATE Magnet program.
Yes.
I had a question either for you or for Robin about the coherent writing program. And is it, I mean, I'm just trying to grasp what it is like. Is it anything like Jane Schaefer? I mean, is it a highly structured, explicit writing program, or no?
No, it's not. It's more about professional development for the teachers
Got it.
around the different genre, and it's broken down so that every grade level's not doing all of it. It's like 1 or 2 genre, 3 at the most, and then there's consistent prompts that the students do throughout the year, and it's that holistic grading where the whole staff gets together, and in this case, when the district gets on board, we can do it across the district and start looking at our writing across the district so that at each school it's consistent and the expectations are there. So it's more about professional development and lots of good strategies for teachers to use the writing program in the to supplement open court, to add to any of the other, like Marge was talking about Writer's Workshop, some of the schools are using Step Up to Writing. It fits with all of that because it's like the systematic ELD. It's a framework, and it's about professional development. It's not a program.
Got it. Okay. Here's my question. Do you have any materials that would be appropriate for board member consumption that you could put in the board brief?
Yes, I can do it.
Thank you. That's it. Those are my questions.
Great. Thank you.
Get home to that baby.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Oh, all so much. And as a board, we need to take action on these. Go. Do you have a question?
No, I was just going to thank Ms. Ronzoni for staying too, because we always appreciate it when the other
I actually think
principals
that's extremely
remain.
helpful. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I did have one just quick question or comment or another thing to add to our list of things we want to add. One of the things that I have asked for many times, I'm always told that it's either I'm told it's impossible, we can't do it, or I'm told it's easy, we can get you that information. So I get the two extremes, but I never seem to get the information, which is, can we see the data for native English-speaking students? Because when we compare, for example, the AYP scores for Latino students versus the white students, those numbers are influenced by the English learners, I assume. English learners are included in the Latino student
That's correct.
data.
That is correct.
So, and I have always wanted to know what the Latino data would look like if we
pulled out the English learners.
The English learners, if we had native English-speaking Latino students, what would their data look like?
Actually, I think Brian did something like that a few years ago.
I did.
Yeah.
I don't remember the results at this point, though.
We can do that if you want. I did a report where I compared the Latinos who had college education and had high parent education to white students. And you remember that report was quite fascinating because actually in some schools the Latinos scored higher than the white students did. What you're asking for is a little bit different in that. You're just wanting to see if you pull the ELs out of the Latino, how do they do?
Right.
One of the things you'll notice is that the percent proficient for the ELs is almost always just a couple of points lower than the percent proficient for the Latinos. And so my best guess would be that it would only be like maybe 5 or 6 percentage points higher.
And if I recall correctly from the study that Dr. Sarvis did, there wasn't a big difference.
Yes, that would be my best guess because you got the two figures there. You can almost figure it out.
It would depend on what the
The size of ELs to
Yes.
this, right, and that's why I'm saying it's about 2 or 3 percentage point lower. So I would say about 5 percentage points higher for the Latinos with the ELs removed would be my best guess right now.
Do you or somebody else know, just general ballpark figure, what percentage of the Latino students in our schools are English learners?
Yes, I can give it to you right now. Hold on a sec.
Okay, in the meantime, why don't we take care of this vote for item B1, because it was not presentation and approval of the single plans for student achievement by the elementary schools. So may we move to approve?
So
And I have a
moved.
question. We voted to approve the other 6 plans, so it was.
No, we didn't. because
Okay,
we're all
people
here.
did not want to. Okay. So we are approving all 12 of the plans that were presented to us, 6 at the last meeting and 6 at this meeting.
So I
Okay?
move that we approve all 12 of the single site plans.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that it passes, they are approved 4-0 with a, Dr. Noel had to leave a little bit ago. I'm sorry, it was Cordero and Malakoff. Okay. Okay,
So you want your answer. In the elementary district, there was 1,554 English learners testing, and there was 2,464 Latinos. If you assume that the vast majority of the English learners are Latinos, then of the 2,400, 1,500 are English learners. So it's about, 3/5 or something like that? So more than half.
do you want to start by having Dr. Sarvis pull his old report? So
Do you remember, Dr. Sarvis, do you remember when that report was from?
it was when you were the assistant superintendent for elementary.
I believe
Oh, it was quite some time ago then.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
I believe it was 4 years ago. You probably want to see fresh data, don't you?
I'm just wondering if it was from in the time that I was on the board, because I don't seem to recall it. But if it was, it would have been at the very, very beginning then. But you know, it's okay with me if we look at, but I do think the fresh data probably would be better.
Goes on the
We
list
will.
then, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we are on to item B2, approval of contract award to the low responsible bidder for the parking lot alterations at Santa Barbara Community Academy at the La Cumbre Junior High School site.
Well, let me just introduce this to you. This is part of the parking lot curb cut, which was vital to the location of all of the grades of the Community Academy, Santa Barbara Community Academy at the La Cumbre campus. And we are at the point where we can get you a bid, and we didn't want to waste a moment on this. So Dave Hetjunk is with us tonight to present that information.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis. President Harder, members of the board, I apologize again for bringing this during a special meeting. Thank you. Again, I apologize for bringing this to a special meeting, but we wanted to let the contractor get started as soon as possible before Christmas break so they could finish at the end of Christmas break. As outlined in the updated attachment, we did open bids We do have a bid that I think is reasonable. The bid was over the original estimate. The three of the reasons, or the main reasons for that are listed. Number one is that we wanted to keep the access open during construction for fire access. Fire trucks could access over the lawn area, but we'd rather not take a chance if there was a fire of any fire truck not being able to make that in case the lawn was overwatered. And so we want to make sure we protect the building in case of emergencies. That was not a consideration when we gave you the original estimate. Once we did the topographical survey, we have to do a little bit more work there for elevation to meet the grades. And what was the? Oh, and ADA access. We had some ADA access issues with keeping the sidewalk and the driveway parallel with the street, making sure that the cross slope in certain areas was sufficient where we didn't affect people that did not want to turn right and go into the school from the sidewalk or left from whichever way they were coming if they wanted to continue and just stay on the sidewalk.
None of this is for the actual parking lot, it's all for the curb cut?
This is the curb cut going back into the parking lot and also for raising some drop inlets in that parking lot that are too low, that need to be raised up for safety concerns, both of where the cars drive and the area between the new handicap spots and the elevator needs to be brought up and have a grate put on. So it's all the remaining work to make that driveway functional. So it's a little bit, some of the things are beyond the scope of just the curb cut, yes.
I guess I have to be philosophical about it, that it's an asset to both the academy and to La Cumbre in terms of parking lot improvements in general and also emergency access.
It is, and that driveway was never ideal,
Right.
even if it stayed La Cumbre for maintenance vehicles, for access for anybody. It was just not a good driveway.
No, it was not, having been on it a number of times to drive to the back of the school, yeah. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Hetyan? Is there a motion?
Well, I'll move to approve this contract to Lash Construction.
I'll second. Reluctantly.
Yeah.
May I just note that I
Certainly.
know that this is significantly over the estimate at the time, but we are still under that $450,000 amount that we allocated, and the other projects so far are coming in within that range.
And I'm assuming, or maybe I shouldn't assume, that we would get a bit of a budget update on this when we have our facilities master plan meeting? A little recap of the budget so far?
We could do
Yeah,
that.
we-
We
yeah,
could do
yeah,
that.
Okay.
yeah.
Good.
Okay, great. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? So it passes 4-0 with Dr. Noel absent. And that was a motion by Ms. Malakoff and a second by Ms. Cordero. Okay. Then this meeting is adjourned.